Am I the asshole here for telling my friend next time then, after I missed her wedding? We are childhood friends. We have a brother-sister relationship. This gal married at age 23 for the first time. Her husband was a nice guy. Good looking, good character, but they got a divorce 1.5 years after because my friend wasn't feeling it anymore. After some time, she found someone else. No, she wasn't cheating. This guy is someone that I approve of too. But sadly, I got sick and hospitalized just before the wedding and couldn't make it, so she and her husband visited me. We had some laughs and she said, "I wish you were there with us too. I wanted to have my third dance with you." Context: first dance is for the groom, second for the father, and third is for the brother, if the bride has any. To lighten the mood, note that I was under heavy medication, I blurted out, "Don't worry, I won't miss the next one." After I said that, her husband was laughing and she slapped me and left. A week has passed and she doesn't speak to me. In the comments, Dipshitistan says, "I'm gonna give you a pass because 1, you were medicated, and 2, it's a funny line." Grim Echo 21 says, "Well, if being medicated means dropping gems like that, I might just need to start a prescription myself. Seriously though, you get a pass this time. Just don't make it a habit, or we'll have to start charging for the laughs." Zealous Ideal Fail says, "It's amazing what a little meds can do. I was getting a colonoscopy and woke up during. They were talking about not finding anything this time, versus 5 years ago, and I groggily chimed in, as long as an alien doesn't come out and attack you. A la Alien movie." Lil Happy Pumpkin 1020 says, "Not the asshole. It was funny, but she slapped you. That is not okay and everyone's kinda glossing over that. I would count that friendship over if it was me. No matter how insulted you may feel, hitting someone is wrong. You were heavily medicated and recovering. She should be thankful that you or the hospital don't press charges, taking into account the staff didn't see what happened and report it. Yeah, you can't just physically assault someone because you didn't like the joke they made." You hear that, Will Smith? Oh my god. I don't know, I get that it was physical assault and everything, and that it is bad, but this particular incident doesn't strike me as, oh my god, I need to end this friendship levels of physical assault. I can pass this one. I think we just need to cheer up a little bit. I don't think it was full-on physical assault. Well, yes, it is textbook physical assault, but he said a funny, and it was funny, and the husband was laughing, and I'm sure the husband's gonna back OP up and say, "Hey wife, that's a dick move, what's wrong with you?" But yeah, I think not the asshole for this one. It was a good joke. As long as she apologizes, recognizes what she did wrong, and makes it up to you, I think we can all just look back on this one fondly and laugh at the stupidness of youth. And now, onto the update. My friend contacted me and invited me for drinks. They were back from their honeymoon, and we went to a pub that we frequent for another round of celebration since I missed pretty much everything. We both apologized to each other, me for the joke and her for slapping me. I asked about the silence, and they told me that it was a combination of both being abroad for honeymoon and feeling awkward after the slap. She admittedly found it funny after she cooled down. Her husband found the joke hilarious apparently, but he made me promise to pay the alimony if they get divorced. So now I have motivation to make this marriage last as long as it can. Aside from that, everything is cool. We got to have the dance that I missed too. In the comments, Marsupial Misanthrope says, "You and your friend are totally the asshole for being reasonable people and depriving us of weeks of ever-escalating dramatic twists and turns in the saga of nutcases by communicating like actual adults. What is this world coming to? What is this sub coming to? I'm glad you guys patched it up. Best wishes to all of you." And OP says, "I apologize for depriving you of drama. Thanks for the best wishes." 12weewoo says, "It's disturbing that her slapping you is brushed under the rug as an equal offense to your words. She should be profusely apologetic about hitting you over a comment that she didn't like. I'm glad that she thinks it's funny now, but you are way more forgiving than I would be." And OP replies, "Don't worry. She was extremely apologetic about that. Plus, when you have 20 years of history, a slap is very easy to forgive." Brooke B replies, I feel like there's some wiggle room here, depending on what kind of slap it was. Was it a slap to the face with a full roundhouse swing? Was it a quick smack from beside her body to an arm or leg? Something in between? And did it leave a bruise? Callie Coates says, OP. It was a slap to the face. I can't judge it properly because I actually don't remember if it hurt. I was just confused after. The slap and the silence is the reason why I'm writing here. If it was something playful, I would tease her more, but she got very upset. I don't know, I think everyone can judge it how they would like. I still think that they did the right thing, apologized and made up for it. I don't want to overemphasize saying that, oh my god, this is a problem, this is that, this is this. I think it's easy to overreact and imagine the worst thing ever when it comes to a story on Reddit, because we only ever hear about the worst things possible. Oh my god, he slapped you? He must have been worse than the Chris Rock slap. Oh my god, are you okay? Do you need jaw surgery? That's physical assault. We need to go to the police over this one. I don't know. I think that's overblown. I think people overcomplicate these things. They made up. They apologized. The friendship is going strong. It's still jokes. Thank you, OP and company, for being well-adjusted, normal human beings. A rarity in this day and age. I appreciated the story very much. My fiancé has ghosted me since he found out about my past. This happened a week ago, and I've not heard from him since. I've tried texting him, calling him, went to his apartment, went to his sister's house. I can't find him, and everybody is telling me that they haven't heard from him either. Everybody except his brother, who obviously did not get the memo like everyone else did to lie to me. He actually told me that Greg, not his real name, doesn't want to see or speak to me. A brief rundown on how we got here. We met 3 years ago at a church function. Yes, I know, Reddit hates religion, but it is what it is. I've had a very rough life when it comes to men, so I really don't engage any of them in conversation other than just briefly if I can get by with it. However, I was listening to Greg speak to a group of people about a book that I had just read, so I stood there and listened to him. After he was done talking, the group kind of hung around a little, and I asked him questions about the book. He answered every single one, and the more he talked, the more I was attracted to him. Now, this may not sound like much, but it was the first time that I was actually attracted to a guy since high school. As I said, rough experience, but suffice to say, after I left high school, I got very involved with a very bad crowd. I turned to drugs, and when my family finally had all they could take, when I was 19, they kicked me out. I don't blame them for this, by the way, because I stole from them to feed my drug addiction. They tried many times to help me, but when I stole a very large sum of money from them and spent it on heroin, they had enough. Living from friend house to friend house, couch surfing for about 6 weeks, but still a junkie, I got caught stealing from them as well. I was homeless for 2 weeks, and honestly lived on a park bench for a couple of days. I decided to start stripping and everything that goes along with it. In other words, I was doing private parties, private dances, and yes, it quickly turned into just being paid for sex. I don't even remember a lot of that time because whenever I wasn't working, I was either high or working to get high. I did this for a few years. On my 23rd birthday, I overdosed. I had overdosed several times, but not to the point of not breathing, and I stopped breathing. The paramedics honestly saved my life because they did CPR on me and brought me back around. I was in the ICU for 3 days on a ventilator, and I had several IVs. While I was in the ICU, a preacher came by to see me. He was just a minister who goes and visits with families and patients. He came to me, and he spoke to me about how life has a higher purpose. He said a whole lot more, but I won't bore you with it. Needless to say, whether it was with him, me being fed up with my life, or God, I don't know, but it really moved me. And when I got out of the ICU, I asked them to help me get off all of the drugs. It worked. I've been clean since the day I left, and have never had a single desire to go back to that. It wasn't easy at first, but every day got better. I got a job, I reconnected with my family, and then I met Greg. I had never been in love. Not even in high school, but after going on just a few dates, I was head over heels for him. On our 1-year anniversary, he asked me to marry him, but with the idea that it would be a year till the wedding. I happily agreed, and it's been the best time of my life. I felt the warmth every single day of his love. But then my mum and dad and I were making wedding plans. They wanted to pay, even though I told them not to, and one day while we were talking, they asked me what Greg knew about my past. They were asking if he knew about the drugs. My mum and dad don't fully know how far I sunk. The drugs were bad enough. My mum said that if Greg never asked, then I really should just keep it to myself. That I was a different person, and what was in the past should just stay in the past. My dad, however, said something that actually made sense at the time. I kind of regret listening to him now, though. He said that even though I had changed, who I was still a part of who I am, and hiding the past really is like lying. If Greg loved me, then he wouldn't care about the past, but if he ever found out on his own or some other way, then he might not be so forgiving because he might consider it a lie. So last weekend, I got all of the courage I could muster and decided to tell him everything. He knows things that my parents don't know, and now I feel very much betrayed. At first he thought I was joking, but when I reassured him that I was not, he kind of got quiet, and then he told me that he appreciated the honesty. He didn't know how he felt, and that he needed time to think. That has been a week now. I let him go Saturday through Saturday, with only texting him a couple of times, just letting him know that I still loved him, and making sure he was okay, and if he had any questions to ask me. Well, he never responded, and it's been a week since I've heard from him. I don't know what to do. He's been my rock since we got together. In times that I've been down, he has picked me up. When I've been sad, he has made me laugh. I truly hope that I've not hurt him. I think that would be the worst thing of all. I know my past life was disgusting, but it's been 6 years since I've been completely out of that life. I was in another city, actually even in another state, so there is no way that past life can come back to see me here. I made no friendships or relationships during that time, so there is nobody going to seek me out. Can anyone please tell me what I can say or do that will resonate with him? I really love him with all of my heart and will do anything to make this right. In the comments, longtime melon donor says, "You absolutely did the right thing here." I would reach out and say, "Look, I understand if you need time, I get it's a lot, but I need to know this is a 'I'm processing this' silence and not a 'goodbye' silence. I'm happy to answer anything else, but I told you this so that you know me as a whole, not just the me that I rebuilt from rock bottom." Finn141414 says, "You have an amazing story of recovery. I think your father really nailed it when he said to be honest, that if he loves you, he will understand. That said, it was undoubtedly a lot to take in, and I can't really say what he is thinking now, whether he'll be able to process this and come around, or if it will prove to be too much. I'm not sure what else you can do. You can't take it back, nor should you. You know him best. Does he believe in forgiveness, redemption, second chances? I hope he does. Your father gave you amazing advice. I would suggest that disclosure should come a lot earlier in the relationship though, like 4th or 5th date. Hey, before we go too far, there's something about my past I want you to know. Doing it earlier reduces the stakes. Some guys will be cool with it, some won't. It's best to know early on so you both can move on if it's a deal breaker. Your guy probably feels betrayed, like he doesn't know who you are and that you lied to him. You can't control his reactions, and maybe your relationship can't survive this. The ghosting approach isn't good, but he's dealing with a lot here too. I like the earlier suggested text. One last thing. The world is a messy place, and as an older person, let me tell you, everyone has baggage. Your past does not define you, and you deserve a partner who accepts you in your past. Back up to the post, there is an update. We are taking about a 30-minute emotional break. I asked for it, and he said he needed it as well. We've been at my place all afternoon talking. I'm not gonna lie, it's been rough. I've cried more today than I've ever cried in my life, but we are talking, and as of now, we are still together, just no longer engaged, at his request. By the way, all of the crying has not been sad cries. He's also been very open with his past, and it touched me that he felt compelled to be this open when he didn't have to. I don't know if anyone really cares, but I'll try and write a full update later tonight, but thank you all so much for the words of encouragement. It has helped me far more than you will ever know. Yeah, I understand that the ghosting was hard, and, I don't know if in this particular case it was an immature thing to do to ghost like that. I think I can understand his stance because that's a very heavy thing to drop on someone that I think he understandably needed time to process. I also think that you've handled it well by having this sit-down conversation with him, and him being open to you about his past is also a very good indication. Getting engaged within 1 year is a bit crazy, I won't lie. I've seen it before with a friend. Everyone thought that was crazy, especially given that they were way younger than you two in this story. Slowing it down a bit, holding off the engagement definitely is a good idea though. Don't go rushing into things, kids. That you have time. And now, on to the update. The title of the post was really inaccurate on my part because he did get in touch with me and we met for several hours on Sunday. So he didn't ghost me, he never intended to ghost me, and his family did not lie for him. In fact, we had time to talk at church. His brother came to me and apologized for the way that he handled my phone call. He said he clearly did not understand his brother's wish to be alone to think, and on his own interpreted that to mean that he didn't want to talk to me. The rest of his family had no idea that there was any significant problem and didn't know where he was because he went away for the week and told them to only contact him for any emergencies. Obviously they knew something was up, but had no idea. So the ghosting part was a combination of miscommunication and, well, honestly, just anxiety and impatience on my part. We both apologized over that and moved on. Anyway, we met at church for morning service, and I got there first and went and sat in our usual spot, and he got there just as the service was starting, but he came over and sat down beside me, and we shared a quick smile as the service started. I was dying on the inside. After service was over, people were shaking hands talking. This is when his brother came to me to apologize, and while we were talking, he slipped away and talked to a few other people. I have a feeling this was planned, but whatever. He came back over and asked how I was, and I almost lost it, but I held it together and said that I was okay, but obviously I was tearing up as we were talking. He asked if I wanted to talk now or later, and I just wanted to get it over with because if he was going to break up with me, I just wanted it to be done and over with so I could go home and start the grieving. So I just said I'm ready. He said he really wanted to talk somewhere private and asked where I would prefer to go, and all I could think of was my place so I didn't have to drive when it was all over with. He followed me home and came inside and said that he really wanted this to be civil. Not a good sign. By this time, I was already a bundle of nerves, so I just blurted out, "Are you going to leave me?" Obviously, I'm crying as I say this. What he said next left me with a lot of hope because I really thought this was a done deal. He said that a lot of what happens going forward would depend on what I said that day with him and how much I wanted to tolerate from him. That last part really confused me, but I was just so relieved that he didn't say yes that I basically collapsed into my chair and told him that I was ready to do whatever it took. He then said that if that was the case, then he would ask for 2 things from me, and that was honesty and patience. He started off apologizing to me for not being a better man. Well, that was all I could take, and when he said that, the floodgates came open. Here was this wonderful man who I basically lied to and dropped probably what I can only imagine from a man's point of view, being one of the worst things you could ever tell a future spouse, and he was apologizing to me. I had to hug him and tell him not to apologize to me. He held me as I cried for a few minutes, but then tried to gather myself to listen to him. He went on to say that he had a horrible week. He said he had come face to face with a lot of his own insecurities, jealousies, and prejudices. He also said that he learned something about himself, and he didn't like what he learned. He said up until I told him my story that he didn't realize that he was very possessive and had a jealous streak. He talked a lot about it, but I'll skip that because it was really personal, and well, this is already going to be the length of a book. He then asked me if I was willing to put up with him having some very probing questions and some very personal comments about them. Again, I said I was going to do whatever it took. So, he asked the following questions. 1. Did I use protection every time? 2. Did I have any interaction with anyone sexually in the city that we live in now? 3. Did I have any idea of how many people I had sex with? 4. Have I been tested for any sexually transmitted diseases? And if so, when was the last time? And did I keep records of it? And 5. Am I willing to be tested again and even again in the future? 6. Did I ever have sex with anyone without them being a customer? 7. What types of drugs did I take? 8. When was the last time I took drugs? 9. Do I feel any need or desire to take drugs or any other substances since this incident occurred? 10. How can I guarantee to him that I won't in the future turn back to drugs? 11. Does sex have any real meaning for me, and do I enjoy it, or is it just something I do now to be close to him? 12. How much money did I steal? 13. Did I pay back the money? 14. Have I ever stolen any money or anything else without it being for drugs? And 15. How can I guarantee to him that I won't steal from him in the future? This took several hours to answer because I often had to stop to compose myself, but I answered every one of his questions as honestly as I could. He often told me that I didn't have to answer them if I didn't want to, and kept apologizing for asking, but he said that to go forward with anything, he knew that he had to know or he just wouldn't be able to. He then listed out his concerns and asked if I really wanted to work with him on them, and he would understand if I didn't want to. I said I wouldn't be here if I didn't want this. So his concerns were as follows. A. He's afraid that if times get rough in the future for whatever reason, I might steal from him or his family. Honestly, I was surprised by this, as this was not something I thought would be an issue, but it was the first thing that he talked about. Now, to be fair, his family owns a business, they are not rich, but they are not poor either, so I guess he's worried when he takes over that I might steal. B. In his words, he has an irrational fear that once a junkie, always a junkie, and he said he doesn't know how strong he is, and it would kill him if we stayed together and I sunk back into that world. And C, his fear that sex would be an issue going forward. He said that he has had horrible intrusive thoughts all week. The fact that I've been with so many people and done so many different things that nothing would ever be special, and ultimately he was afraid that he would become bitter because he would feel like we were just having sex for him, and that knowing that I would just be participating would really make his desire to have sex with me drop significantly. Again, I listened to him and I answered every concern to what I could. He said he knew a lot of this was nothing I could ever really guarantee, but he just had to talk about it. I told him that I understood, and I had already suspected some of this would come up. As I said, we spent several hours going over this stuff. We had to take a couple of breaks so that way our emotions would not get the better of us. He really went through the range of emotions himself, but I knew that I had to let him if I wanted this to work. He told me that he was willing to stay and try to make this work because he really loved me. Obviously, my heart leapt at this, and I cried again. You would think with everything that I've been through, I would have been tougher than this. But he said that he didn't feel like we could go through with the wedding as scheduled, and that in all honesty, he would like to end our engagement and stay dating, exclusively of course, for a while. He said in all honesty, he felt like while he believes me and feels like he knows me, he wants to take the time to look at this from a new perspective. This is where the part about feeling like he didn't really know me comes in. I took off my ring to give it to him, and for the first time, he broke down and cried. He told me to put it back on, and that he just wants to postpone the wedding, not end the engagements. I told him that we could do whatever he thought we had to do. He said we're just going to tell people that we're going to postpone the date due to scheduling conflicts, and we would let them know a new date. Then we had to decide what we were going to be telling family. He said from his side of the family that he's going to tell them that he was feeling pressured at work and that he got upset over a misunderstanding about time away. I told him that I would say whatever he wanted. He said that it was best to not tell anyone else about my past except for our minister, who we're going to go to start couples counseling with. We both agreed to this. As to my family, well, this is where the one problem we had that day came up. He just assumed that my family knew. I told him they only knew about the drugs and stealing. He said that he thought my parents should know because they're paying for the wedding and it will cause some problems cancelling events and stuff, and he didn't want them to think that this was just because I used drugs years ago. It wasn't a deal breaker for him, he said, but it was something he felt was right, but would abide by whatever I thought was best. I really do not want to tell my parents. What I did was bad enough, stealing and doing drugs, but if they knew that I stripped and prostituted myself, I don't think I could ever look them in the eye again, and they have been so wonderful to me since I've come back. So in conclusion, this ended better than I ever dreamed possible. Yes, I know he has a diminished view of me. He really was upset that I waited so long to tell him, but I had to know that this was inevitable, and he said once he gets over the initial shock, he will try his best to never bring it up again. He truly is a wonderful man, and I am so very lucky that God put him in my life. In the comments, Zen Moonstone says, I wish the best for you. You did the right thing being honest. Your fiancé loves you, and hopefully this will bring you closer and help build a stronger foundation. I would recommend offering to pay your parents for any cancellation fees, even if you have to pick up a part-time job on the weekends to make that happen. JohnBoy374 says, my daughter disappeared for a few years due to drug addiction. Fortunately, she came out the other side, and now she is happy and healthy and has a little boy. I know there were other things that happened that I don't know about. I don't want to know, it doesn't help me in any way. In fact, it would just hurt me, and I know that it would hurt her for hurting me again. Honesty is the best policy. Do you honestly want to reopen old wounds? Chances are, like me, they know deep down that other things happened, but they accepted you back, and you're walking the walk. Leave it at that, and live your best life. Good luck to you. Jinxity says, if your fiancé is worried what your parents will think about him postponing the wedding, instead of telling them about your past, you can say that you pushed for the postponement because you wanted him to have time to absorb everything and to re-establish trust. If you present it as mutual, they won't think that he's overreacting. Or just say that he wants to take time to rebuild trust because you plan on being together for a very long time. So there's no need to rush to marriage. There are ways to shift the blame, for lack of a better term, off your fiancé that don't involve telling your parents the things that you'd rather they not know. And I agree with others that they don't need to know, especially as you have to put that part of your life behind you. And OP replies, thank you so much for this. Sometimes things that are so simple and right in front of you are just not obvious. This is in fact so simple and spot on that it's brilliant. And now onto the new update. First off, things have been great between us. I mean, there have been issues, but nothing that I didn't expect, nor anything that I can't handle. I still am happy that he is in my life. When I last left off, he asked me to tell my parents because he was afraid that they would think that he was being overly critical of a previous drug habit, but he also told me that he wouldn't make that a deal breaker. He just thought that it would be a good idea. Well, after thinking about it more, I just felt like I didn't want to have to tell my parents that part of my life. I believed with all of my heart that they would have supported me, but I just didn't want to go through all of the emotions of telling them. I explained it to them, and he was fine with it. Said that he respected my thoughts on it and would never say a word to them. I decided on my own to tell them that we are postponing the wedding. I told them after we had talked that he wanted to stay together and that he just wanted more time to think about things. I thought that this was best, as I didn't want him to be there to have to explain anything, because if something would have come up, I didn't want him to feel trapped. I told them. They were disappointed, obviously, but they understood. He had given me money to give them to pay back their deposits, but they said that they didn't want it, and for us to keep the money. I thought that was the end of it, but was I ever wrong? He came over for Thanksgiving dinner. He had lunch with his family. I was invited, but couldn't attend due to not getting off till late from work, and then having to help my mum make dinner here. He got to my parents' house around 4 or so, and we ate dinner at 5:30. My parents, both sets of grandparents, and several cousins were there. Dinner went fine. We ate and everybody was having a good time until my cousin, who was several years younger than me, 12, asked when we were getting married. There was a long, it seemed forever, awkward silence, and he just sat there looking at me for guidance. He spoke up and said, probably next summer, to which my mother's mother heard this, and obviously nobody had told them that the date was off. Well, she proceeded to ask if she had the dates wrong in her calendar, to which my mum quickly jumped in to just say that there were scheduling conflicts. Well, that should have been it, but instead of accepting that, my grandmother starts asking what the scheduling conflicts were. If it was the church or minister, she was going to get this straightened out. This went on for a good half hour, and I could just tell by the look on his face that he was sick of it. He never said a word, but he looked almost very upset. Finally, my family starts to leave at about 8:30 or so, and after everyone says their goodbyes, he and I go back to the living room and sit on the couch. I apologize profusely to him, and he says he's fine, but I can tell that he's not really fine, but he's starting to be less tense. My parents come back in from the front porch after telling their parents goodbye, and they sit down, and my dad apologized to both of us, saying that our family means well, but sometimes can be overbearing. The three of us laugh, but I notice my mum not laughing. My mum proceeds to take a bad situation that was under control and actually ending, and decides to dump buckets of gasoline on it. She said that she felt bad for her mum because she thought she was upset because my grandfather, my mum's dad, is having health issues, and they were afraid that he wouldn't live to see my wedding. Here is where it goes to hell. She said it was silly to postpone things over a drug addiction that hasn't been a problem for several years. Oh my god. Oh, that's too good. That's so funny. My boyfriend just sat there, but I could physically both see and feel him tense up. I was holding his hand. My dad spoke up, and he and my mum started arguing over it, and by what they were saying to each other, I could tell that they had talked about this after I told them, which was no surprise really, and I could tell that even though my dad was trying to be polite and make my mum shut up, that he pretty much felt the same way. I just couldn't take it anymore. I felt absolutely horrible for Greg. He not only had to sit there for my grandparents, he was now having to sit there for my parents, and everybody is blaming him for all of this. It wasn't fair to him. I spoke up, and I told my parents that I had to talk to them, and that they needed to stop arguing and stop blaming Greg for any of this. He squeezed my hand, indicating to me that I should stop. I looked at him, and he shook his head no. I told him that this was not fair to him, and ultimately, it wasn't fair to them either because they were blaming him for the wrong reasons. Obviously, this got their attention. I went ahead and told them that after they had kicked me out of my own house, I had no home, no job, no education, no skills, no nothing. I only told them that I became an exotic dancer. I just couldn't bring myself to tell them more. But they're not dumb. My mum immediately gasped and started to cry. My dad just sat there dumbfounded and tried to calm my mum down. My mum, after being basically hysterical for a few minutes, apologized to Greg. She said she had no idea and that he was a wonderful man for staying with me even knowing that. Whoa! Oh my god, what do you mean by that, Mum? That's crazy. That is an insane statement for your own mother to make. Not sure how I feel about that statement, but I guess in the end, she was coming from a good place. I think. Nothing like that good motherly love, huh? But the main thing was that it did take the blame off of him. My dad welcomed him to the family by saying this was just a typical Thanksgiving, trying to be funny. Yeah, this is just your run-of-the-mill Thanksgiving, yep. I asked Greg if he would mind if I talked with my parents, and I would see him on Friday. I walked him out, and we kissed goodnight, and I told him how wonderful I thought he was, and he told me that I didn't need to tell them, that he wasn't going to say anything. I said I knew he wouldn't, but it was just going to never get better with them unless they knew the truth. I went back in and spent the next several hours talking with my parents. Needless to say, it was heartbreaking on several levels. My dad openly cried, and I've never even seen that. He blames himself for this. He said that he never should have kicked me out and that he ruined my life. No matter what I said or did, I could not console him. My mum tried as well, but nothing was working. We all went to bed, and I was woken up by my mum panicking, calling 911. My dad was having chest pain. The ambulance came and said he was having a heart attack and took him to a hospital that specializes in heart problems. My dad looked horrible, and I was scared more than I ever have been. I called Greg, and he came and picked up my mum and I and drove us to the hospital. They would not let us back to see him as they rushed him into the surgery, and the doctor came out telling us that the ambulance most likely saved his life by recognizing what was happening, and that a surgeon was with him putting in stents, and had basically already used like a plunger or something to get rid of a blood clot that they found. We called our minister, and he was there within half an hour. My dad is scheduled to come home tomorrow. He looked great tonight and said he felt perfectly fine. Greg has been a rock for both me and my mum. When he left to go get us food, my mum actually told me that I needed to make sure to keep him because the only man she knew that was better was my dad. Guys, I don't know how to feel about mum's comments. They always kind of feel backhanded. That's better than the last one, but I don't know about that. I'm just grateful that my dad is going to be okay. Greg said tonight when he dropped me off at home that life is never dull with me. We both laughed. I have to try and help my dad realize that what he did was tough love and that he can't blame himself for my poor choices. He didn't just kick me out after the first, second, or even 23rd time. They tried for a couple of years to reach me, but I just wasn't having it. I spoke with my minister about therapy for my dad, and he said that he will speak to him as his minister and recommend another therapist if my dad is open to it. Hopefully, this should put an end to any updates. I know that Greg is the love of my life, and I am doing anything in my power to make sure he knows how much he means to me and how I will never betray his trust in me. In the comments, Don't139 says, "What exactly did the parents think OP was doing to survive? When you get addicted to heroin, there's not many jobs around that allow you to fund your fixes. OP's mum really rubs me the wrong way. Even if it was just for an addiction that was long gone, Greg would have been valid in wanting to postpone. Because any reason is a good reason. Because the only two people concerned are him and OP. If he feels like he needs time, then so be it. Getting pressured into marriage never ends well. She tried to guilt trip them into not postponing, and then said that Greg was such a great guy for not dumping OP like the damaged goods that she is. Greg's reaction through all of this only shows that he is human. He rationally knew that OP was the person he had known for a year, but that kind of info is a lot to process for anybody, and having to talk through it is normal. Healthy, even. Because he chose communication instead of burying his head in the sand. He confronted the issue head-on. He wanted to know. Unlike OP's mum, who never wondered how her daughter managed to live all this time. I hope they have a good life together, and do not let anyone guilt-trip them into anything." I think you can already tell that I'm on board with this comment. What was with the mum's commentary? She should just shut her mouth at this point. I get why she's saying those things, I get the place that it's coming from, but given that initial comment of, "Oh, I'm so surprised you stayed with her," your husband should have been in your ear saying, "Stop being insane. Please stop saying insane, inflammatory shit." Anyway, Greg is amazing. Greg is human. Greg is a rational and caring person. I respect Greg. I respect OP for doing everything she could to bridge the gap with her family and Greg. That must have been an incredibly awkward Thanksgiving. That would not have been a fun time. I don't even think I want to be a fly on the wall in that one because it's not like, Impractical Jokers levels of cringe. This is like, oh my god. I'm watching a lot of hatred and confusion going on right now that, these people can't even be filled in on the full story because it's just going to make things worse. But hey, what a story. Thank you for sharing that with us, OP. You didn't have to, but I'm very glad you came to the internet to kind of get an unbiased perspective on this. I think that really helped you out here. I'ma just say, I think that Reddit did a good job helping them. So thank you for the story, thank you for the multiple updates, and I hope that everyone else listening enjoyed the story too. I saw a text from my girlfriend's male coworker saying that she has the best in town, and I'm not sure what to think. Earlier today, when my girlfriend was getting ready in the morning, I saw a text pop up on her phone. Usually I wouldn't look, but she left it on the bed facing up, and her texts come through pretty prominently. From a male coworker that she's told me about in passing, let's call him Doug. So I had no clue what the context of the situation was, but all I saw was the one text stating, "You sure do have the best in town, prawn emoji," with that exact emoji. So now I'm just confused, because I feel like that's some code for something. She was also hella dodgy when I casually dropped that Doug texted her. She avoided my gaze for the rest of the morning while we were getting ready, and seemed distracted when I dropped her off. Thoughts on what that might mean, or how to approach her? Angleflow says, "Following because I'm an old man who doesn't know how to interpret the emoji." I'm old. Eyesight is going. I had to look at that emoji on my phone with and without glasses before going, "Is that a goddamn shrimp? Hey, can you cook us some shrimp tonight?" "Oh, you can't? Well, Doug said you had the best in town." Well, she either makes a mean gumbo, or she's banging Doug. I'll let you decide which is more likely, especially considering she felt so guilty that she couldn't even make eye contact. David Eeyore says, "I don't get how you can see a text like that, be bothered by it, then not ask your girlfriend to show you the text thread just to ease your mind. Crazy to me how people are operating out here. Especially since it's 100% deleted as soon as he was out of eyesight." Well, then he knows something's up. Well, she's not going to delete the whole text thread, just the incriminating ones. Amazing Lime Mediocre says, "I don't understand all of these people talking about just ask your girl about it. Have y'all never been cheated on? About 0% of cheaters just volunteer information about their infidelity when asked." Also, I'm pretty sure OP is just confused about that shrimp emoji and was hoping someone could narrow it down for him. Sorry OP, I have no info into shrimp or what it might mean, and now you've alerted her to the fact that you're paying attention to her communication with Doug. If you're going to ask to see the thread, maybe wait until she gets comfortable again and drops her guard. Doing it when you're sure she's having a conversation with him would be the best time. Don't you usually take the shrimps off a tail? So, logically you eat the body of a shrimp, but you discard the tail. And tails are a prominent thing in shrimp, so they're saying that she has the best tail in town. I, for one, welcome the roaring 40s back here. Hey Tony, she got the best tail in town." Flips a coin in my hand and smokes a cigar. And now, onto the update. So, we broke up. Turns out the best in town was exactly what I feared, but I'm honestly kinda relieved. We had our problems, and this was probably for the best, for me at least. The only thing that sucks is that she refused to tell me what the hell the shrimp emoji meant in that context. Honestly, all of the guesses people have been throwing out there have been cracking me up and helping to keep me sane right now. Moral of the story, never date a girl with the best in town. In the comments, how did you get confirmation of the physical affair? OP says, "I just asked her straight up when she got home that day. She tried to deny it at first, but she broke pretty quickly. Honestly, it is what it is, and I'm weirdly relieved about it. Still feels pretty shitty though. The messed up thing is her denying you closure by not telling you what the shrimp thing means. What's sad for her is that she cheated on you with the village man whore. Or not at all. It's a wonderful day when the town bicycle ends up with a community pogo stick. It protects all of the normal people from their nastiness. Prawn, good body, shit head. That's what it means in Australia anyway. It means she gives the best sucky. With certain shellfish, like prawns and such, you pop it and suck it down all in one. He's saying that she got that OG Super Slurper 3000 on God. Yeah, the shrimp tail, I guess, doesn't make any sense, but if you If it's blowjobs, you suck the head of that shrimp. Those shrimps by nature, they be sucking up stuff on the ground. That makes a lot more sense to me. I welcome the roaring 40s regardless. Our next post is by user Ornery Bookkeepers 8115, titled, "Am I the asshole here for refusing to go to confession so I can take communion in my brother's wedding? I, 31 female, have 3 siblings, 40 male, 38 female, and 27 male. And we have a good relationship despite the age gaps between some of us. My older siblings are both married, and so am I. The wedding in question is my younger brother's. My younger brother Luke is engaged to his girlfriend of a year, Emma, 28 female. She's nice, I guess, but we've never really clicked and are just polite to each other. Something important is that we are all Catholic, but not really hardcore ones, and some of us are even lapsed. I do believe that this whole situation started just when I met her for the first time. I look younger than Luke, and it's always been a sibling joke that I'm truly the baby of the family. Most people that meet us assume that he is older than me, but nobody's had issues with it until Emma. The day that I met her, she kind of scoffed when I said I was happy the baby had a proper girlfriend. She has this weird thing about being the eldest in her family and refused to believe that I was older than her until I showed her my ID. She's been hot and cold with me since then, often infantilizing me or trying to have a sort of boss attitude. I just let her be, and usually ignore her since I have no time to try and beg for her friendship, so I'm just polite and civil. I always include her when planning stuff, but don't really make an effort. The family knows about it, but we just left it down to different personalities. Then the wedding planning started. Emma decided that I could not be in the wedding party since I was not married in a church. Fine by me. Then she requested that immediate family submits their dress plannings so she could check if it fits the wedding dress code. Fine, whatever. You see where this is going, I hope? You'll see that I've not gone to confession or had communion in more than a decade. If I go to a mass for whatever reason, I'm respectful and simply sit or stay standing during the rites that I don't participate on. Well, this is not good enough for her, and she says that I need to take communion during their wedding. I said no, and she's not taken that well. For the most part, I avoid her as I said before, but this time I wasn't gonna say yes or risk an issue. I told her for taking communion, one needs to go to confession, and I didn't want to. She said all immediate family is doing it, and it'll look bad if I don't. I told her sure, fine. Then I'll just go have communion in front of everybody, but I won't do confession. Then she said if this was going to be my attitude, that I was uninvited from the wedding because I clearly wanted to ruin the day for her. I turned to my brother and told him, thanks, gave him a thumbs up, and went home. My family understand my reasoning and said they respect everybody's choices, but I shouldn't have said what I said. I told them that I really don't want to go to the wedding anymore, and I don't owe Emma explanations on my life. I only called my grandma because she heard what happened and asked me not to disrespect the church by doing the communion without confession. I promised I wouldn't do it, and she is fine with me now. I got a text from my brother wanting to compromise, so I replied by asking if the other lapsed people are being made to take confession too. He said no, because it was only nuclear family members. I find it funny since all the others are clearly older than her, and she just behaves like this with me and the youngsters. Am I the asshole here? Lucky Effective says, not the asshole. Who died and made Emma Pope? And OP says, lol, I'll share this particular one with my grandma next time we talk. She's gonna love it. Novel Ad replies, yeah, last time I checked, the church determines those rules and would prefer that you abstain versus taking communion for appearance's sake. So since she's not the Pope, yet, your faith or lack thereof and how to handle it when attending Mass is kinda between you, the church, and God, according to the rules that she feels like being a perfect little Pharisee about. Beautiful Report says, you should alert the priest to her behavior. He'll ensure that she stops with her actions. She cannot make rules that do not exist in the church. I would send a quick email to him and let her deal with the consequences of her own actions. OP says, I actually considered it, but I don't think I will since my grandma might be doing it herself. She is lapsed herself, but didn't want me to be disrespectful, but she knows the priest that will be officiating and is not really happy with all the shit show. Different Leather says, someone suggested, and I'm seconding, some malicious compliance. Confession is a great place to explain a long story. This is a great idea. Confessionals don't have to be used to confess, at least not when I was growing up. They can be used to discuss problems or, rat people out. I don't really know anything about all this religious stuff when it comes to weddings. And I don't know, it kind of seems ridiculous to me that, you can't be a part of it because you didn't get married in a church. Genuinely, who died and made her the Pope? What's going on with that? But regardless, go on with the malicious compliance. Go rat her out with that confession, Do your due diligence. Do what she's asking, but throw her under the bus while you're doing it. Not the asshole here for doing that. You would be the asshole for depriving me of funny content by refusing to do it. And now, on to the update. Things have moved, but I wouldn't call any of this positive progress. I would like to clear something that I keep seeing in the comments. I won't request a special blessing or go into the queue for communion. It isn't about the blessing or the compromise, but the singling me out. I often just stay quiet or take a general family blessing if we go to weddings, etc. I have no issues with compromises. I have an issue with Emma and her ridiculousness. I don't know why she has this thing with me. I do look young, but not like a teen or a child, obviously. She has 2 younger sisters and is very authoritative with them. I've witnessed her being very my way or the highway with younger people, so she has issues for sure. The confrontation from the last post was on Tuesday, and today we had lunch at my grandma's. I think you should also know that my brothers have a tricky relationship, as in they are not as close with each other as they are with the other siblings. My older brother Robert is very no-nonsense, and he's never been a fan of Emma, but he didn't think that he should have to intervene because Luke is an adult and capable of navigating relationships. All this is going to be relevant, I promise. We visit Grandma a lot since she lives by herself, and we truly enjoy her company. Today we were all there because she is over this drama already. After a lunch, that was more like snacking to be honest, she asked all of us to clear the air. Emma continued with her rant about me being a disrespectful person and that she was asking the bare minimum from me. My grandma asked her why she had no issue with her not taking communion, and Emma said that she was her elder, and for sure her reasons were more than a tantrum like it was in my case. She also repeated that she was asking this of all of the siblings, and I was the only one that was being difficult with her tiny request. This is where everything crumbled for her. I mentioned in the comments that Robert is also lapsed, and he was already exhausted by this situation. He asked her why she had no issues with him not taking communion, and she looked like a kid that was caught. She didn't have a proper answer. Robert then asked her if she even knew why he and Grandma became lapsed. She shook her head and then looked at Luke for help. Luke, on the other hand, was staring angrily at Robert and I, but said nothing. Robert explained to Emma that he was the reason Grandma became lapsed. When Robert was a teen, he came out as gay, and was so worried about our grandparents' reaction since they were very active in the Catholic Church. Grandma felt awful about it, and even worse when she went and spoke about it with the then priest of her church. That priest was super old school, and told her that Robert was committing sins. He was going to hell, he needed to find his way, the whole 9 yards. Grandma didn't take that so well, and simply stopped going to church and started spending that time with her grandchildren. Over the years, she started getting into the whole community again, but she decided that she was done taking the sacraments. She respects parts of the church, but can't fully reconcile with it. Emma was a bit confused since Robert is married to a woman, and he explained that he is bisexual and ended up with a woman just as he could have ended up with a man. He also commented that they are not married in the church, but that didn't matter to her like it mattered when it came to me. He asked her directly what was her problem with me. Long story short, she said that I was rude since the beginning and kept treating Luke wrong. Oh, and I was also very snarky about looking younger than her. Crickets. She is a beautiful, successful woman, so I still don't understand her obsession, but it seems like she wants people to see I respect her and what she says. I just started laughing. She started crying and saying I turned my grandma against her. My grandma told her to stop blaming people for her being a negative person, and she was always going to side with me over her. Luke got upset at that and asked her why she was not supporting him, and she simply said she doesn't support him being a lapdog for a crazy woman. Damn, Grandma. More was said. Nothing got truly resolved. I was kind of invited again, but declined going. Grandma is undecided if she even wants to go at all. My older siblings told Luke that they will go to the ceremony if he seeks couples therapy, or at least therapy. My parents are having headaches, and now dislike Emma so much they can't hide it. Oh, and yes, Grandma spoke with the priest, and he wants them to do extra premarital counseling, or he won't officiate. I hope they don't get married, but he's old enough to derail his life if he wants. I thank you for letting me vent, and my grandma loved the Pope joke. In the comments, K.A. Irony says, "Lol. Well, I hope for your brother's sake that the extra premarital counseling results in him rethinking his plan to marry Miss Entitled and Controlling. Good luck to you." What's ironic is that the Catholic Church has a mandatory course or consultation called pre-Cana that couples must complete before marrying in the Catholic Church. The course helps couples prepare for the sacrament of marriage by reflecting on the spiritual, emotional, and practical aspects of marriage. The priest or deacon also weighs in on the compatibility of the couple. At least those I know who went through it had that happen. I think it varies by diocese, but I know that my cousin's was 6 months long. And now onto the second update. My brother has gone too far, and I decided to be done with him. He made our grandma cry, and I think permanently damaged a lot of his relationships. I went to mention some of my cousins and other family members thought that I was just stubborn and creating drama, but now there is no longer my side or Emma's side. Maybe he always felt this way, but the issue he has with Robert is absolutely ridiculous. He was so upset with what Grandma said about him being Emma's lapdog that he called her to speak about it. I was obviously not present for the conversation, but Grandma told me what happened, and Luke confirmed it. He told her that it was unfair of me to ask Robert for help since he was her favorite grandchild and would get her to side with me no matter how wrong I was. He also told her that many of the cousins believe this, and that it was so obvious since she even left her religion for him. He claimed the other LGBT members of the family, most were not even born when Robert came out by the way, doubted if she would do it for them. So, Grandma explained to Luke, and then called every single one of her grandchildren to ask them how they felt, and explained to each a part we didn't know. She said that when Robert came out, and she spoke with the old priest, he hinted about knowing of places to set Robert straight. Grandma had heard horror stories from these places, and so had Robert, and they both spoke with my parents together about that not being an option at all. My parents never intended to send Robert there, and are very casual Catholics, but Grandma wanted to cover the basis just in case. I was told Grandma sounded like she had been crying on the phone, and after the couple first phone calls, which went from oldest to youngest, the group chat started to blow up. Robert is livid. Our LGBTQ+ cousins are livid and say that Luke lied, and even the cousins that were telling me to stop being stubborn-headed are livid. By the time that I was up for my call, I was already on the way to Grandma's. 2 of my cousins were already there, and the youngest one, Sarah, 16 female, was ready to literally fight Luke. For a bit of levity, Sarah is about 35 centimeters smaller than Luke, and the image of her swinging at him made me laugh a bit. She asked if I was making fun of her, and I just explained the whole mental image of her trying to hit him, and she admitted that it was kind of funny. What I didn't tell her is that I would love to slap some sense into Luke. My grandma has been through so much in her life, and this is not what we want for her. She looks puffy-faced and kept asking everybody if they truly felt unloved by her, saying that she would do everything for any of us, explaining how Robert was the oldest grandchild, but that didn't mean that she loved the rest any less. She's a strong woman, but I think something inside her broke a little with the thought that she hurt her grandchildren. It was a shit show. A big one, and I was just so done with Luke. My parents have been passive towards the situation so far because I asked them to. But after they heard what happened, they told him they need time away from him. Robert is simply disgusted and decided to not speak with him anymore, which he communicated through the cousins group chat, with Luke's response being that this is why Emma's help on reining all of us in would be so beneficial if we just let her. He also added how Robert never cared for him or anybody really, and he just tried to be the center of attention all the time. He cited his coming out, his announcement he was going to marry a woman, the birth of his child. It was ridiculous. He came out when Luke was a toddler, and for many years, only our parents and grandparents knew. He announced he was going to marry his now wife through a text, but didn't interfere or took from anybody. His child was 4 months before Luke's graduation, and apparently that was a big issue for Luke that he never commented. Maybe I'm biased, maybe I'm selfish like Emma claims, but I call bullshit on his tantrum. Every single one of the cousins has been helped, babysat, tutored, gotten out of trouble, you name it, by Robert. He isn't perfect, but he isn't the conniving ass that Luke is claiming. Maybe Luke has always felt inadequate and we didn't notice, maybe it was his last-ditch effort, maybe Emma has manipulated him so far that he can't come back. It doesn't matter anymore. If he does marry Emma, I wish him the best. If he doesn't, I hope he goes to therapy. Regardless of what he decides, he burned so many bridges and hurt so many people, I don't see this resolving anytime soon. For now, I will focus on my grandma and making her feel better. I feel extremely guilty because it was Emma's situation with me that opened this can of worms. I know I shouldn't, but it's hard not to. In the comments, LizardGirl25 says, "Wow, it sounds like it's self-projection from Luke. He's the conniving asshole he is saying Robert is." OP replies, "Robert is the type of older cousin that Sarah would call if she's drunk at a party and needs a safe ride. He also did it for Luke, which is why I don't get his deal." Ghost3022 replies, "Irrational behavior is called that because it can't be rationalized. Luke is exhibiting very irrational behavior, which is why you'll never understand it. The best you can hope for is that he gets some serious therapy and pulls his head out of his ass sooner rather than later." OP replies, "If he asked for help and apologized sincerely, I would be there in 2 seconds. He knew what he was doing when he spoke with our grandma. He knew that it would cause her pain. He knew that he would hurt Robert too. Robert might not be crying, but he feels bad about the situation. He has always looked out for everybody and even has pictures of him holding every single one of us as babies all over one of his walls. I always knew they weren't the closest of brothers, but this is too much." Pride of Cape Town replies, "Was this really Luke's inner feelings coming out? Or is this Emma poisoning him into isolating himself from his family and support system? Either way, he's a gigantic asshole. You, your grandma, and all of your cousins should boycott his wedding." OP replies, "So far, nobody is going to his wedding. My parents are undecided about attending the ceremony, but they lean more on not attending." Update 3. I want to start this by saying that Grandma is in better spirits now. I am overwhelmed by the amount of people supporting her and very grateful for it, even if it's online. I've talked about this on some chats and DMs, but please know the situation with Emma is not about her being parentified or her family being strict Catholics. It's just her being her. They were already going to get premarital counseling, and extra was added. Oh, all cousins don't live in the same city or town. Some are a bit longer than others, but we keep in touch through the chat. The reason for the update is mainly to let people know that Grandma is okay, her health is fine, and she had a blast with my cousin Sarah. I also want to update on what has happened with the cousins and the maternal side of our family. Some of our paternal cousins, from Grandma's side, have relented and feel a bit bad on excluding Luke from things, so the compromise was met on, he can be invited to everything, just don't force people to interact. These cousins are mainly on the older side and have soft spots for the youngsters. My youngest cousin, Sarah, said she was okay with it all, but she wanted them to keep him away from her since she can't stand him anymore. Our maternal side was a shit show, because of course we need one. Some of them were very upset, but others told me that I should try to understand where he was coming from. My mum was the one that told them everything, and some told her that she is at fault for making Robert the star of the family. This was so uncalled for, but brought up some issues in my family, particularly when one of my maternal cousins asked me if I could behave enough if I'm seated at the same table as Luke for his wedding. It makes us doubt ourselves, but really, this is a cousin that Robert has bailed from almost bankruptcy 2 times, and he's the problem? I haven't said much about my sister Lucy since she voiced nothing different before. She was always very close to Luke, and even had a great relationship with Emma before the debacle. She decided to be out of it because she was so disappointed. While she was never made to babysit or anything like that, she was always so into Luke since he was her baby brother. She loved him the most, and I know that because she literally told me when I was a kid. We have a good relationship now because her kids are my buddies, but it was rough for a while before that. She was upset about the whole thing, but when our maternal family, or at least a part, started excusing Luke, she lost it. She is a very calm person, the type you don't expect a bad word out of, but she lost it, and I think that was the last straw on the cold bucket for Luke. She sent a massive message about what has been happening, detailing every single thing, and daring people to kind of come at her if they disagreed. She made sure to include every single nasty thing, every bad word, every eye roll. She sent it to so many people because she was tired of the half-information telephone game. She is upset at me because my refusals made this happen, and she said she knows she shouldn't, but she needs time to fix her feelings so she's not speaking with me right now. My parents decided that they were out of the wedding and told Luke that he is on his own. There was never a monetary issue. They were willing to contribute, but both Luke and Emma are pretty well off, and there was no need for that. Now to what maybe most people want to know, and the only conflict that I'm interested about anymore. My grandma is feeling better. Sarah being with her was very positive. It was lovely to see the eldest and youngest of our family so in tune, but then again, they always have been. She requested that Sarah invited Luke to her birthday party, December, and after a lot of back and forth, he is going to be invited. We will see if he comes or not. A small parenthesis, I showed my grandma the joke of the knife, sword, etc. She was so giddy. Thank you. I mentioned before that Robert would pick up Sarah if she needed. It is still true. What I might have not mentioned is that she of course gets a weird lecture from him, and an even weirder lecture on how he rates certain drugs. As I said, he's no saint, but he's not a shit either. And lastly, yes, he has photos even with my sister or me in the newborn wall. People love to take pictures of him holding the new family members, and he collected them and put them together when he got his own house. In the comments, Dog the Bot Hunter says, "How do we go from I won't do confession to everyone blaming Robert for the end of your brotherly relationship, while simultaneously all of them also blaming you for everything?" OP says, "Have you not met Catholic families?" Jokes aside, I think it's easier for them to blame Robert and I than Luke, since we're not going to go on a rampage that would hurt people. I'm just sitting here, waiting for when the cousin will need to be bailed a 3rd time. And OP says, "You could join my husband. He's just laughing about this particular cousin's position." Chocolate Candy Bar replies, "I rationally know it is because insecure and entitled people both have an issue with gratitude, and possibly the first person they would stab is the person who helped them, especially in a family or a social circle where the one who always helps is also the he does it and all of you don't. Rationally. Truth is, this happens to a relative of mine too, and more than once I had to call people off and I still can't believe it." And OP replies, "It's deeper than that. The first time it happened, Robert organized a fund so people could help out and do it faster. The second time, he even sold a couple of things so he would reach the goal faster. This cousin has a house because of Robert, and Robert does this type of thing because he doesn't want anybody to feel powerless. Robert made clear that he will not help him anymore, and made it clear, and my cousin is spiraling now. It just sounds like your family doesn't deserve Robert. Like, how did Robert get born to be such a saint, and then everyone that came after him, blames him for everything? Even though Robert has done so much to help so many people? Oh my god. Emma sounds exhausting, and I don't blame any of you guys for not going to that wedding. If I were you, I'd just be cutting her off entirely. She refuses to see reason. She's such a piece of shit. It is not worth the drama dealing with people like that. This evolved so far from the original problem that it just became a shitfest within the family. I hope that everything sorts itself out in the end there, OP. I hope no more conflicts like this come up. My ex-fiancée ghosted me before our wedding. It's been 16 years now and she wants to talk it over again. Should we reopen closed wounds? I was never given an explanation. She just left and told nobody. It was literally right before our big wedding ceremony. She didn't leave a note, nothing, just left. Even her family were left baffled. She just up and left. We had dated throughout high school and all through college. She eventually returned, but not to me. I had to learn via third party, her parents, that she had no intentions of coming home. She wanted nothing to do with me and told her parents to avoid having me around. I never got a choice in the matter. I respected her wishes. I never understood why she did it. My only guess was she had a mental breakdown because she cut off all contact with everyone. We were both young and still growing. I don't know, but I've struggled with it since. Out of the blue, she DMs me on Facebook after all these years and wants to meet up. I'm in an influx of emotions right now. Angry, nervous, hopeful, sad. I still have feelings for her. I don't know if I could take her back, but looking at her Facebook makes me miss her. She's even better looking than she was before and single. I'm conflicted. She won't talk about anything as to why she left. She said it's best to do so in person. The only thing I can tell is from her Facebook is a bunch of stuff about her being weak and living a life full of shame and regret and being lonely. This is dumb. She ghosted me and I should want nothing to do with her, but damn it, I still have feelings for her. I never stopped thinking about her. What should I do? Ghost her in return? Call her out? See where this date takes us? In the comments, Booty-Clad Dad says, first off, damn OP, that's rough. 16 years is a long time. Would meeting up with her set you back in the time you've spent getting over this, or will it give you the closure that you never found? OP replies, I don't know. I just want closure. For the longest time, I thought she had cheated on me, but the only things I've been told from her family and the few friends that she didn't cut off, it was more like a mental breakdown. I know she was scared to death about the wedding and her looming finals and her career. She was beyond stressed. She ghosted everyone. She gradually came back, but I was never involved. I've never stopped thinking about her. I am Corey B replies, Sweetie, from a woman, tell her that you've moved on and don't wish to talk. 1. She isn't a friend. Never was. Or she would have let you know what was going on. 2. She's unhappy at this point in her life and is remembering the good old days. And 3. Have a little more confidence and self-respect. Deleted says, I've been in your situation, although she returned after a year, and tried to make things like they used to be. I'm going to tell you something very important. Her explanation will not be enough, and it will not be closure. You're probably a stronger, better person these days. I hope. So meeting her might not set you back. It will probably upset you because nobody should ever be ghosted like you were. There is no excuse. The weeks, months, maybe even years where you were left wondering are over. They don't matter. You've lived on just fine after a while, and nothing she says will change that. Meet her if you want, but she doesn't deserve the satisfaction of, at least I told him, without being told off for it. Best of luck. Yeah, I agree with these takes. I don't think he should take her back because that is tremendously disrespectful. I think he should give her a piece of his mind because, there's nothing you can say to make up for 16 years of hurt. That is tremendously cruel. I don't care what her explanation is. That's insane. I don't think OP should get back with her. I think he runs the risk of it happening again. And now, on to the update. Well, that was something. I got closure at least. We met at a cafe and sat and talked outside. The first thing I noticed was how badly scarred her arms were and how much pain was in her face. Long story short, she wanted to break up long before the wedding. She was too weak and cowardly to speak up for herself. She had a complete nervous breakdown over everything. She had been tired of being forced into doing things she never wanted to do and never having the guts to stand up for herself. She was mad at her family pressuring her to get married and pump out kids. She was mad at them for forcing her into a degree that she didn't want. She was mad at herself for not being able to speak up. Nothing she did was justified, which we agreed on. When I first proposed to her, I did it in a public area. I had put her on the spot, and she wanted to say no, but she couldn't bear to see me hurt. She was right. I made all of the choices for her. I was a very different person back then, and she was very meek, as in she just went with the flow and had no backbone. I drowned her voice out often, and often never gave her the chance to grow to be a person. Back then, I was often focused only on myself. Well, everything came to a climax, and she had a complete mental breakdown. She ran away from her problems at the behest of her best friend and only person in the world that she ever trusted. As she said, it's the only thing she knows how to do. Run. She never had the spine to speak up. Her life just spiraled downwards. She did a few years homeless after her best friend's husband kicked her to the curb. The rest of that time was spent in prison, which she didn't specify what she did. She was released about a year ago and has been turning her life around. She has a job, she's reconnected with her parents, and she's finally reconnecting with me. She never stopped trying to get in touch with me. As for our future, we have none. We both agreed to end things and go our separate ways. We are both changed, two different people. We have nothing in common, and we don't live near each other. She doesn't justify what she did, nor does she want to be forgiven. She thinks it's repulsive and is ashamed of her actions. I wanted to be angry, but I couldn't. I just forgave her. With that, we shook hands, said our goodbyes, and that will likely be the last time that we ever see one another. It's bittersweet. I got the closure that I wanted. We both did. It feels like a burden was released. I know now that we never had a future together and never will. But on the other hand, I'm sad because it's over. All these years maybe hoping something would happen were for naught. But in the end, this is an ending, and I finally have closure. Not many get to say that. Do I believe her story? Yes, I do. And even if she's full of shit at this point, does it even matter? I've always known her to be very weak-willed and meek. She often just does what everyone else tells her to do, and often runs when things get too difficult. She avoids her problems because she was too weak to stand up to them. I mean, it makes sense why her family would not talk to me about her. They were the typical tiger parents that disowned their problem child. In the comments, Deleted says, "Well, that went better than I expected. I'm glad that it's definitely over now for you both. Although a lot of time has been lost for either of them, it seems odd that no one noticed the situation of her problems earlier on. It's explained in the post, but it still sounds weird. Sounds like she was repressing a lot, bottling it up inside. Her friend, though, she should have been the one to see it." Florida 2000 says, Nothing like yours, but I got a call 20 years later and an apology from my first long-term girlfriend who cheated on me. Although it didn't matter, it still felt nice to know that she regretted her actions. If the closure never came, it would have been fine too, but I'm sure it was still settling to hear her admit and close that chapter of pain forever. I got a message out of the blue from my ex apologizing for trying to blackmail me with suicide after we broke up. Honestly, it was nice for me to get that closure because I think in the back of my mind, I still really struggled with it, and for him to actively reach out to me showed me how much better he was doing. Look, I'm glad that OP got their closure. It's probably for the best that they had this chat. That's a lot to just put out on the table like that, and I can imagine that was so much for OP to process, being like, I don't even know the person in front of me anymore. Really rough that society just chews up and spits people out like that sometimes. Mainly society being her parents. Oh my god. Who needs enemies when you got parents like that? Hope that you're doing okay after all of that, OP, and thank you, as always, for sharing your story with us. That was incredibly, deeply personal. Our next post is by a deleted account, and it's titled, My male 24, long-term girlfriend, female 22, cheated on me, got pregnant, but everyone around me keeps pressuring me to stay with her. So we grew up together in a small town, known each other for our whole life, and eventually fell in love when she was 17 and moved to the city together 2 years ago. I work as a carpenter, and she's still at uni. 2 weeks ago, she suddenly dropped the news that she's 3 weeks pregnant. I know for sure that it cannot be mine because I always use protection and never have sex under the influence of alcohol or drugs. So I pressured her, and she confessed that she slept with an exchange student during a school vacation trip. She said he's been hitting on her for weeks, but the sex was unplanned. That's why he didn't have a condom prepared and she didn't have pills ready. And it's only one-time thing in that she had no feelings for the guy anymore. I was totally in shock, but after a day, I decided that I can't stay in this relationship anymore. First, I'm not ready to raise a child that's not my own. Second, I don't know if I'm able to forgive her for betraying me, at least not at the moment. So I break it off. I asked my boss if I could stay at the workers' room, for temporary workers, at the warehouse, and let my girlfriend stay at our place until she finds a house. I pay full rent because only I work. So eventually our families and our mutual friends got the news, and they're now all pressuring me to get back with my girlfriend. Except for my sister, who supports me. They say that it's wrong to abandon her at a time like this, especially my dad, who I had to fight with every 2 days because of this. He says he knows she's a good girl. This is just a young person mistake, that I should stay with her and give the child up for adoption. And my parents keep messaging me, convincing me to take her back. One of them even accused me because I'm the reason that she moved to the city, so that it's my responsibility. Now I'm heartbroken, lonely, and shattered. Feels like the whole world doesn't give a single shit about how I feel. I just want to move to a new city and start everything from zero, but I don't have the courage. Maybe some advice from you guys would ease the stress. In the comments, that brown boy 30 says, your friends are being ridiculous. Listen to me. It doesn't matter if it was only a one-time thing. This girl cheated on you and then was hoping that you wouldn't realize that you couldn't have gotten her pregnant. She was going to pretend like you were the father. She cheated and lied and was going to let you raise a child that isn't yours without you knowing. She only told you because you pushed. Kick her out of your apartment and tell her to go live with her baby daddy. You owe her nothing. And no, she clearly isn't a nice person. Edit, thanks for the awards, guys. You broke my Reddit award virginity. Swede74 says, not your fault, not your concern. The day she was unfaithful, she left your relationship. The child already has a father. Let him take care of them now. Not your problem, it is his and hers. 0% Wrong says, of course everyone is pressuring you to stay. Someone has to pay for her and the baby to live while she goes to school. Save yourself more heartache and leave now. Resonating Octave says, yeah, but the part that seems off is his own family supporting her too. Like, we have to acknowledge that they are all, besides OP's sister, on the cheater's side. Genuinely can't wrap my head around their logic. Not like it's their responsibility to look after the cheater and her child. Back up to the post, there is an update. I didn't think my story would get this much of a reaction. Thank all you guys for caring and giving me advice. I tried to read all the comments that I could. I thought I could get through this alone, but you guys make me realize that I am not alone, so I just called my little sister, and she'll be on the train to the city tomorrow morning to stay with me for the weekend. I also called my parents and her parents, and they agreed to come to us this weekend to discuss this matter. I don't know how it's gonna go, but I hope I can update this situation in the next few days. What is going on with this story? Why? What logic is that his parents are like, yeah, you should keep the baby and you should keep that relationship going. That's your responsibility. Hell no it isn't. What the hell? She admitted to cheating on me. The relationship is over right then and there. I don't care if she's pregnant. I don't care if she got a baby. I'm not staying with a cheater. That's just adding embarrassment to the disrespect shitcake she's just served me up. I'm not eating that. You can eat that if you want it, parents. That's not my responsibility. What's going on here? And now, on to the update. Sorry for not updating sooner. The initial plan was for our parents to come to us, but they called in the last minute, saying that they can't come because of their jobs, so we had to take the train back to our hometown last Tuesday. So because they didn't follow the plan, my sister and I had the whole weekend talking about my decision. Mostly, she asked questions and I answered to my true feelings, and in the end, it's unchanged how I feel. So I went to the meeting with everyone on Tuesday. I told my sister she shouldn't come. That was the first time I met my ex-girlfriend since the incident. I blocked her on all of my social media, and I told her not to contact me. I told my parents right from the start that I've made a decision and that I'm here just to discuss how to handle things. First, a lot of you guys said that I should take a paternity test. I proposed the idea, but after a few minutes of discussion, she said she doesn't want to do it. I'm still sure that I'm not the father, so it's her choice, really. Second, about the real father, my ex-girlfriend said she contacted the guy herself, and he was as shocked and as panicked as we are. He will be back to his home in October, so he didn't have a clue how to handle everything either. And we agreed that we won't involve that guy anymore, as we wanted nothing to do with him. Third, about the child, she and her parents decided to go for abortion. They said because the pregnancy is only a few weeks old, she won't have to go to do surgery and can do a home abortion. They explained a lot, but I don't have much knowledge on this. I think that's the main reason they didn't want paternity test, because they don't want to wait, and I'm okay with that. That leaves us to the final one. I wanted to break up. I would expect everyone to jump at me, but it surprised me that they didn't. My ex-girlfriend just sat there biting her lips with her head down. I think she already knows what I'd say. In all our years together, I've always been the one who made my opinion heard, and she's the silent type. Her parents were totally silent, so my dad sat there with his arms crossed, and my mother tried to ask something once in a while, so it was just me monologuing the whole damn thing. So that's it. We broke up, but I still wanted to remain friends. I still care about her, and you can't just completely erase 20 years of your life. We went back to the city together, and it's just 1.5 hours of us talking about all the good memories since we were children. That's the first time that I felt peace in weeks, to be honest. We spent the last few days packing up her stuff. She'll stay in the city with me until next week for doctor's appointments, and then go back to our hometown for a while. Thank you guys for making me feel like I am not alone in this. Many of you made supportive comments and inboxed me. I think I'll have myself a fresh start. Maybe university is a good choice, as my sister is also going to university next year. In the comments, XConnect101 says, next step is to get new friends, because the ones you have obviously don't care about your feelings. GuardDog2020 says, not surprised she and her parents had little to say. She was clearly in the wrong, and in a major way. She did one of the worst things possible in a relationship. There was no way around it, and no denying it. Long Jumping Voice 452 says, I'm honestly surprised that OP's dad was more mad than her parents. Talk about giving your son the middle finger. Especially in moments like this, you should support your kid. His dad is just a bad father. Yeah, insane that the wronged party is the one who gets more flack than the wrongdoer and her parents. Seemed like her parents were just like, all right, we got a problem to solve, let's do it. And OP's parents are like, nah, you guys got to pay. You guys got to get punished for this. My son didn't do shit, but he needs to be punished. I'd be questioning my future with these parents and whether they deserve to be in it, because what even prompted that? They don't even explain their behavior. That's just downright evil. Thank you for sharing this story with us, OP. I hope everything's okay now. My mom changed my wedding cake behind my back and doesn't know that I know. What should I do? My fiancé and I get married this fall, and the cake has been a huge point of contention with my mom. Long saga, but the gist is that we wanted a dessert bar or cheesecake instead of a traditional cake. My mom initially insisted on having at least a small cake for just us to cut. We compromised and got quotes. Right before we put a deposit down, she decided that having just a cake for us and not for guests is tacky, so we needed to get a sheet cake to serve as well. We were annoyed because she was the one to suggest it, so we cut our losses and opted to do tiered cheesecake and mini cheesecakes, as we originally wanted. My mum would not let this go for the past 6 months. She then decided to focus on pushing for a groom's cake. My fiancé did not want one. When I told her this, she said it's really only a groom's cake in name and not about what he wants. I told her a firm no multiple times because she wouldn't give up. That brings us to this week. I got a text yesterday saying that she was at the bakery and paid for the order. I got surprised because I never included her in those communications. I called the bakery today and was told by a very apologetic employee that my mum had added a multi-tiered groom's cake with different fillings, flowers, the whole kit and caboodle. We still have cheesecake, but I feel like it'll look silly next to what is essentially a wedding cake. My question now is, what do I do? She doesn't know that I know. I'm furious and hurt. And obviously it's just a cake, but it's not really about that now. She went behind my back and crossed multiple boundaries after I told her no. Am I being a bridezilla for not letting her have her traditional wedding cake? In the comments, Knitinator says, cancel it. Cancel it now and give all your vendors a password that must be given before any changes are made. Acidic Talk says, change the delivery location to a shelter or food bank. I was gonna say change it to your mum's house. It's her cake, let her have it at her house. Why should she have a cake at your wedding? If you don't want a cake, just charge the order back and call it a day. And add a password for all of your vendors moving forward so that changes can't be made without it. And OP says, everyone I've spoken to has either been in the camp of, well, they're paying for the wedding, or not her wedding, not her cake. I think that's why I'm torn, because yes, they are paying, but changing the order behind my back? I'm more upset about the violation of trust than the actual cake, I think. Stem of Sage replies, I see your dilemma, but helping to pay for a wedding does not come with decision power. It should be a gift so that you have the wedding that you and your partner want. Only you can decide when the gift is no longer a gift and instead is a burden. But I would definitely have a conversation about how grateful you are for their support, but that their money is helping your wedding dreams come true and not anyone else's. Yeah, I agree with that, and I'm in the camp of not their wedding, not their choice. Your wedding, your choice. Unless it was previously discussed, and unless everyone agreed to this, there is no reality where that is the only camp to be in. And as it turns out, it's not her wedding, and there was not a discussion before this. So I don't care what your mum's reasons are, she did wrong here. She knows that she did wrong, the bakery staff know that she did wrong. She's an absolute asshole for going behind your back and changing everything when you've explicitly said no. Does your mum not understand consent? Does she not know that no means no, no matter what? I don't know, I'm pissed off at your mum. I don't like her. You need to sort her out right now. Like, you can't let her take over your wedding. That's unacceptable. And now, onto the update. Hello again. A big thank you to everyone who gave advice on my original post. I'm now married and had the best, most relaxing honeymoon with my now husband without any pesky family bothering us. By the time I posted, it was too late to cancel the wedding due to deposits and contracts, so it continued as planned. And to clarify, yes, my parents did pay for the wedding, although my husband and I made it clear several times that we didn't expect or need them to pay for everything. No, I don't think them paying excuses my mum's actions. My parents reiterated that it was our wedding and we should do what we wanted. Clearly, the cake was the exception to this, though she had previously said to get cheesecake if that's what we wanted. My husband and I got a laugh out of everyone's suggestions for how to handle the cake. Initially, I wanted to go the petty route and surprise my mum by calling the bakery to change the cake design to something that she would find tacky that would reflect my husband's hobbies. You know, like a groom's cake should do. After taking a few days to weigh my options, I knew my desire for petty satisfaction would nuke my relationship with my mum, which had truthfully never had this dynamic up until wedding planning. I knew that she absolutely was the one in the wrong and acting like a child. And while I'm the actual child in the relationship, I wanted to be mature and handle this like an adult, if only for my own moral high ground. I communicated with my parents and listed all the reasons why this situation, and others throughout the wedding planning process, was hurtful and completely out of line. Shock of the century to everyone on Reddit, I'm sure. It didn't go well. There was a series of texts I received from my mum that demonstrated she couldn't take accountability or comprehend that I wasn't mad that she ruined my wedding by ordering a cake, but rather that she went behind my back knowing that it would surprise and upset me on my wedding day. I attempted multiple times to redirect to the actual issue with little success. We ended the conversation with her apologizing for a cake, making my husband and I so upset. This obviously wasn't a genuine apology or the main issue, even if she thought it was. She also agreed to move the groom's cake to a meal that we had the day before the wedding, which I was fine with. At this point, we were a week out from the wedding, and the thought of continuing to press the issue was too much for me to handle with everything else on my plate. I dropped the rope leading up to the wedding so that I could refocus on enjoying my wedding as best as I could. I interacted with my mum as little as possible the day of, and our wedding planner and coordinator did a fantastic job being a buffer. While I've had some contact with her since, it has dramatically declined, so I can get some much-needed space. Obviously, we'll need to have some tough conversations, but I'm choosing to spend my time with my new husband and getting back into therapy first. Weddings, man, they really bring out the crazy in people. Oh, and the cheesecakes were a huge hit, by the way. In the comments, Mrs. Neville Bardos says, "I'm glad you had the day that you wanted and enjoyed your honeymoon. Unfortunately, although previously this wasn't the dynamic you had with your mother, the fact that she refused to see her error and wasn't apologetic, if I were you, I would bear that in mind for the future, i.e., other major events, children, etc., and plan accordingly." Landison507 says, "It'll likely rear its head again if and when you talk to her about respecting your parenting boundaries, if that's a thing that you plan on doing." OP says, "Oh, absolutely. The lack of respecting boundaries/breaking trust for future life events was actually something that I pointed out in our conversation. She didn't seem to understand the point I was making, just kept going back to the cake and not the deeper issue." Finance Mum asks, "Is your mum going through a change of life? I remember my mother was slightly delusional for a few years, and my children have assured me that I was nicknamed the Dragon for a while." OP says, "Yes, actually. While it doesn't excuse it, that's definitely a factor here, and why I wasn't willing to immediately blow up the relationship." Finance Mum replies, "My mum accused my father of cheating, employed a private detective to follow him. It really affects some people. I'm glad you enjoyed your wedding. These memories are so important." And now onto the 1-year update. People have reached out for an update, and coincidentally, I've had several friends get engaged who have similar family dynamics as mine. I've shared all of this with them, but I feel the need to blast this out online too. Now that I'm a year out, I can acknowledge that I love my husband and our life together, but having a traditional wedding was a big mistake. When I think back on our wedding day, I'm devastated to admit that the few emotions I remember from the day were not how much I love my now husband and excitement over our future together, but anxiety over my mum and whether shit was about to blow up. If you're recently engaged and having difficult family relationships, or aren't completely sold on shelling out a ton of money on a wedding, please let this be yet another loud voice yelling at you. Have a courthouse wedding. Don't invite problematic guests. Do whatever you want to do, but for the love of God, avoid that family drama at all costs. I wish I would have stuck to what I originally wanted, eloping somewhere abroad, but alas, I made my decision and have to accept it. What I didn't mention in my initial posts was that my relationship with my mum immediately and irrevocably changed as soon as I became engaged. Even though I knew she could be a lot, I had no idea what I was in for. If I could do it all again, I would have stopped that wedding planning train in its tracks after the first few signs of craziness. The cake was, unsurprisingly, just the last straw of craziness that happened. The great hits include telling literally, and I mean literally, everyone she knew that we were getting engaged, less than 10 minutes after my husband told my parents he planned to propose. That is diabolical. Jesus Christ. Upon sharing the proposal photos with her, commenting on how big I looked in the photos, which are, to this day, ruined for me. Told a family member, who commented on how beautiful I looked at a pre-wedding event, yeah, well, she's gained a lot of weight. What is wrong with this woman? Tried to crash my first look the day of the wedding, and then acted hurt that she wasn't invited. Did crash my first look, and then threw a fit when my wedding coordinator wouldn't let her in. Made the wedding all about how she never had a say in anything, and that I was the controlling, immature one. We do still have contact today, but it's limited, and I'm very guarded with what I choose to share. She never genuinely apologized or acknowledged the stress and hurt that she caused. Short of some major changes on her part, I don't see that happening. So yeah, moral of the story is to absolutely soak up the fresh excitement of getting engaged, but seriously, ask yourself if there's anyone in your life who will make wedding planning hell on earth. If you are oh so fortunate to have a character like that, have a plan to handle it, and be prepared to enforce those boundaries. And for the extra crazy families out there, maybe just elope. In the comments, Grace Stranger Than You says, people really do lose their minds over weddings. It's completely baffling. Nancy Neurotic says, I find that older people hit a point where they start to de-evolve backwards towards childishness and immaturity. My parents were incredibly self-centered, unreasonable, and stubborn in their last years. I don't think that they were this way growing up, but maybe in weaker doses. It was like talking to toddlers who didn't understand reality and only wanted what they wanted, and no one else's feelings or input mattered. My friends and I talk about how our parents all devolved into teenagers at around 73. Peter says, but where is the cake? I want to know about the cake. Erratic Bear says, from one of the replies in the latest updates, I mentioned it in my last post, but it might have been kinda buried. The cake was used at another pre-wedding event, but didn't appear at the wedding. Very few people actually ate it at the event, in solidarity with me, but also because it was a very weird thing to have there. Pride of Cape Town says, I would have told the bakery to deliver it to a local soup kitchen instead of the venue. Poor OP doesn't realize her mum is going to crank it to an 11 as soon as grandkids enter the chat. Yeah, I think so too. And that's probably why OP is keeping such a gigantic leash on that woman. Just keep her as far away as possible, keep her as ill-informed as possible. And I'd imagine if grandkids come into the picture, you know, she's going to learn from her wedding what to do this time to stop that crazy behavior. At least I hope so. I mean, maybe it's going to be a few years until we get that update, but I'm very keen to hear if and when that happens. And you know, much like parents causing a scene at school graduations and everything, you don't notice just how tainted those days become until like a year or years later, and you think back and you're like, all I can remember is the ass-hattery of my parents or my significant others, my loved ones, making the day about them. So I completely relate with OP in that regard, and that's why it's so important to have boundaries and enforce those boundaries. And if you're going to have a wedding, have security so that you can deal with problems on the spot. I wonder if security would have stopped that mother from ruining the wedding day. Regardless, thank you for sharing the story with us, OP. I very much appreciate it. And I'd love to know what you guys think down below. Our next post is by user Midnight Barber, and it's titled, "I'm having a sleepover with guys tomorrow. Is it weird? I'm autistic and I often forget about social norms and stuff. I'm 17 female, and I'm having a sleepover with a few guys who are 17 to 18 tomorrow just to watch horror movies. I didn't intend for it to be just them, but none of my girlfriends could come because of various reasons. My parents weren't thrilled about hosting a sleepover with just them because we're all sleeping in one room, but they agreed to it because they know that I'm not interested in any of them. I've known them all for years and had a sleepover with one of them before. I also dated one of them when we were 15, but I broke it off after a few weeks. Overall, we're all pretty good friends, and that's all I want, a fun sleepover with my friends. It literally just clicked with me that they might interpret this as something different. Will they? I know Reddit is male-dominated, so tell me, if you were one of those guys, would you expect anything else to happen? Should I clarify with them beforehand that it's just a sleepover, or am I overreacting? Edit. For additional details, as of right now, 2 of us will take the couch, 1 takes the recliner, and 1 sleeps on the floor. I will probably take the recliner. The room isn't my bedroom, it's the sitting room, and it's very close to my parents' bedrooms. If I feel uncomfortable, I'll leave them to sleep there and I'll sleep in my bedroom. Also, what I mentioned about last sleepover was like 2 minutes of very tame drunk messing around with one of the guys, but I changed my mind and he stopped, and we both agreed to move on the next day because we're chill like that. He's very respectful, and I've known him since I was a kid. Honest to God, I trust him more than my brother. Edit 2. For a little more additional detail, there will be no alcohol or drugs involved at all. I should also mention that the other guys are all also autistic or similarly neurodivergent. I'm not going to get taken advantage of intellectually, and the notion that I would be is a little insulting. In the comments, Immediate Outcome says, "I'm a guy. From my perspective, if time rewound and I was 17 to 18 and were in this position as one of the guy friends, I would think in my head, oh yeah, totally, we really are just friends. Can't wait to go and chill and sleep over with my homies. But in the back of my head, I'll also unintentionally think, but try to suppress the contradictory thought of, it'd be cool if I got some action from my one female friend. I believe 90% of guys, even the ones who try to be genuine friends with girls, will have the second thought in their heads if they were ever to be in this position. Likely something to do with just how the male brain is biologically wired." Televangelist says, "Bottom line, your friends are human. There's probably some weirdness in their brains because there is in all of us, but they'll hopefully try to do right by you." Yeah, you can't help how your brain is biologically wired. I mean, those are just the staring into the void thoughts, are they not? We have them, but we suppress them, we don't act on them. Especially if the rest are all neurodivergent as well. Like, I don't think that they're gonna be doing those things. I think you guys already have established boundaries, and I think your parents, expect you to respect those boundaries and trust you not to get up to any funny business right next to their bedroom. So I'd say, OP, you are overreacting to this one a little bit, but I understand the hesitation. And now, on to the updates. So here's an update about the sleepover for those who wanted it. It just ended and everyone's left now. So fortunately, for anyone who was genuinely concerned for me, 2 girls ended up coming. It was a last-minute decision, so they were a few hours late, but even without them there, I somehow survived. Overall, it was a great night. We watched a good few absolutely horrific movies. We ate a bunch of shit and laughed obnoxiously loud and snuck out of the house for a midnight walk. There was no drugs or alcohol involved, apart from vapes because some of my friends are addicted. And most importantly, for some of y'all, I slept in my room. It was more for convenience than anything. and also because the two girls wanted to sleep up there, and I didn't want anyone sleeping in my room without me present. I'm kind of glad I did because the sitting room absolutely stank this morning. I did doze off in the sitting room with just the guys there while the girls were already sleeping in my room, but they just woke me up and made me finish watching the movie with them because they're assholes. I'm confident that it would have went fine even if it had just been me and those guys. They are chill. Thanks to everyone who left kind and reassuring comments. I was only ever a bit nervous that the vibe would be weird, but it wasn't. I'm not even going to address the wide variety of other comments I got, but rest assured, I stopped reading them after I started getting threatening DMs. Love this website. In the comments, Tom says, "One of the greatest things in life is having friends you know you can trust. Looks like you have a good bunch there." Aura Mistress says, "Kudos to the parents for trusting their daughter and still allowing the sleepover. Pretty sure they low-key kept an eye out while providing their daughter with freedom to relax and to be a teen. She has a solid group of friends and is establishing really healthy and balanced interactions with boys and girls. Sounds like the sleepover was a blast." No Description says, "I'm happy everything went well and OP's comments about the stinky room made me cackle. I can only imagine the smell of a group of teenage boys the morning after, sleeping all in one room. I don't envy what her parents faced the next morning. Hopefully everyone pitched in with cleaning up." I was just uninvited from a wedding that had already started. Am I overreacting? Today, my 24 male partner and I, 24 female, let's call him Eric, were invited to the wedding of one of his oldest friends from school. We received our save the date months ago, and the invite was addressed to Eric and Vicky. Our invite stated that we were invited for the whole shebang, the service, the breakfast, and the evening reception. Our RSVP required both our dietary requirements for the breakfast, which we replied to ages ago. I thought this was pretty awesome and generous of the bride and groom, as I'd never met either of them, and Eric was only close with the bride, so it was a very nice gesture. The wedding's a few hours away from where we live, and since neither of us drive, I booked train tickets in advance, which came to about £60 each return, and an Airbnb, which worked out at £90 between us. We don't earn a lot, so this is quite a big spend to justify. However, since they had invited us to the whole wedding, we thought it would be rude not to go. The bride also specified colors that we should wear, so I bought a new outfit since I didn't have anything formal that would be suitable. Not the end of the world, but with Christmas coming up, it was a bit difficult, and I had to be really frugal all through November to make it work. Total spend was probably double what I would spend monthly on fun stuff, like going out for dinner or drinks or new clothes. We got to the service, and it was beautiful. The bride looked lovely, and it was very emotional. I get nervous at weddings. Couldn't say why, and so I hadn't eaten beforehand, figuring the 4-course breakfast would fill me up nicely. After the ceremony, we went straight into the venue to have drinks and sit down at tables. We were towards the back of the line into the venue, and so half the congregation had already sat down. We glanced at the seating plan, saw Eric's name, and headed over. There was no place setting for me. Eric found his name, but there weren't any free seats at the table. Eric sat down, and I asked an usher whether there was a mistake. He didn't know, so he waved over the bride. She and I had never met before, but she seemed friendly until she opened her mouth. "Oh no, you're not part of the breakfast. The invitation was just for the reception and service. You're welcome to come back later." This was in front of most of the guests who had already sat down in a big venue, probably 140-ish seats. The usher suggested that I go to the pub. Eric didn't know what to do, but didn't want to cause a scene, so he stayed put and quiet. I quite literally have never felt so embarrassed and humiliated in my life. I left, and it was raining heavily. I hadn't brought an umbrella since it was an indoor wedding, and being in a rural place, I had to walk about 20 minutes to get anywhere else. The usher had suggested a pub where the other guests are, so I just kept walking, but my shoes were literally ruined and soaked through, as well as being pretty damn cold because it's December and I was dressed for a wedding. I get to the pub and find a handful of merrymakers drinking heavily at 2 p.m. in wedding clothes. I introduced myself kind of awkwardly as they were total strangers, and they were luckily really nice. They invited me to sit with them and tell them about the service. All of them had only been invited to the reception. I asked one of them if I could see their invite, and it was crystal clear that they were evening guests. There was no mention of the service or the breakfast, nor the dietary requirements. I apparently was the only person who was invited and then uninvited to the whole do. I sat with them and had some food because I was starving, but they all started leaving to get ready at about 4 p.m. Being a total stranger, I didn't think it best to ask to come with them, but I'd never been to this town before. And besides Eric, I didn't know anybody. Since being ejected at 1:30 p.m.-ish, I was expected to just hang out until 7:30 p.m. when the reception started. So I left. I feel so unwelcome and unwanted that I just wanted to go home. The evening do will start in about half an hour without me, but I just can't bring myself to attend, knowing that half the guests watch me being asked to leave by the bride herself. I traded in my train ticket, which was a return for tomorrow, and now I'm traveling back alone. I texted Eric to tell him, but he didn't respond. I've been holding back tears since I was ejected 6 hours ago, and I feel completely torn. I don't understand what happened with the invite, whether it was a mistake, or whether I was just supposed to know that it was only for Eric, despite being addressed to the both of us, despite asking for both of our dietary requirements, despite explicitly stating that we were invited to the whole wedding. Part of me feels like I should have gone to the evening reception too, but I'm soaked through. My hair and makeup look awful, my shoes are unwearable, I am barefoot on a really gross floor right now, and I'm freezing. I look a mess, and I feel so stupid. Did I mess up here? I feel like I've been totally screwed over, and I'm really upset that Eric didn't stand up for me, or say anything, or leave the breakfast with me. Although I think that's less because of malice and more that he's just a bit hopeless when put on the spot. I've never heard of a wedding where you invite a +1 by name, but then they aren't invited to as much of the wedding as the other half of the couple. Nobody else at the wedding had this happen. I don't see how it can be personal since I've never met any of them before, but I'm really upset, and I can't wrap my head around how weird today has been. If this happened to you, what would you do? In the comments, Plain Truthiness says, the person who messed up was the bride, who is an utter word that I don't use, but she is, and Eric, who is appalling. I absolutely cannot believe that he didn't walk out with you. What the hell was he thinking? Did he used to date the bride or the bride's sister? OP says, funny you say that, the maid of honor is his ex, although we were not aware until we saw her name in the wedding booklet at the ceremony that she would even be there. However, there is a lot of bad blood between them. If she was going to intervene to remove anybody, it would have been him. I mean, it could also have been you because it was you, and that's just as embarrassing, and it's even worse because he didn't even stand up for you. I think that's even worse than him being ejected. 2 Oranges says, this is the tackiest thing I've ever heard. There was a chance that there was a mix-up or oversight with the invitation, but in that case, the bride should have taken you and Eric aside to apologize and see what could be done to fix it. But the way that it was handled was completely unacceptable. I'm so sorry for you. Also, despite your boyfriend being put on the spot, it's been hours now, right? He should have leapt into action by now. Even if it was a mix-up, it's tacky to invite a +1 to some things, but not something in the middle in my opinion. Like expecting someone whose purpose is to keep the guest company to then leave them and find something to do in a strange city. Hell, even at a house party, if an uninvited guest comes in, you apologize for any confusion and make them comfortable. It's the mature adult thing to do. This is so unfortunate to OP. She deserves better. From the bride and her boyfriend. At least a return to her goodbye text. Back up to the post, there is an edit. So this blew up way more than I expected. Thank you everyone for your words of support. It's really helped, and I've gone from a wobbly wet mess to a cackling harpy with my big glass of wine. You guys don't hold back on your opinions, and I kind of love it. It's now nearly bedtime here. Eric stayed at the party, and presumably is still there. I came home and feel a lot better for knowing how shitty of a situation this was. Karma's a bitch, and when they go low, we go high. So I'm gonna go to bed and sleep on it and think about the next steps in the morning. A lot of people think I should dump Eric. whereas that had never crossed my mind. I was mostly pissed off with the bride and the maid of honor, who may have been involved too. I don't know. Eric will be coming home sometime tomorrow, and we're going to talk. I want to hear his piece because he's been drinking since lunchtime. He might just be a dum-dum rather than a full-blown asshole. Either way, no wind-up, sudden decisions right now. I will try and come back and update as and when anything else happens. Thanks, everyone. He can be drunk as much as he wants. He was sober when this happened to you, OP. That's like the baseline level of disrespect that he showed to you. To me, it reads as though the maid of honor intentionally set you up to embarrass the both of you and scorn him as much as possible, and he just went along with it because she knows that he has no spine. If he had a spine, he would have up and left with you, and it wouldn't have been a double hit of embarrassment. It would have been embarrassing on the bride. If he had any semblance of a brain, he would have realized that, but yet he chose the worst, reality possible. I understand that you want to hear his piece first, but understand that that is, without a doubt, what happened. There is no other reality here. He wasn't tricked. He wasn't duped. He chose to stay, and he chose to let you walk out in the rain by yourself. That is insane. Those are not the actions and choices of a partner that has your back. That's someone that lets everyone else walk all over the both of you. And then ghosts you, doesn't reply to any of your messages for the rest of the day, and doesn't check in on you. What's up with that? Who is this guy? Why are you still with him? And now, on to the update. I hadn't expected the big reaction to my first post, and just want to say thank you to everyone who gave advice and was supportive. I was feeling super shitty when I initially posted, and after an hour of drinking wine and reading your comments, I felt a lot more sane and calm. I wanted to clarify a few things that people were confused about or that weren't clear in my first post. I'm in the UK, and our weddings are different to the way that weddings are held in the US. Traditionally, there is a ceremony, the wedding breakfast, which was a sit-down 3-course meal. Although it's called breakfast, it's usually in the afternoon, followed by speeches, and then an evening reception, which is like a disco. It's not uncommon for people to invite only relatives and close friends to the ceremony and breakfast, and then invite lots of evening guests for the reception. However, it is uncommon to invite somebody to the reception and ceremony, but not the breakfast, as then they are kind of left to entertain themselves somewhere for 6 hours. Having talked to friends and co-workers since last weekend, what happened to me was a serious no-no in terms of etiquette. Eric and I have been together for nearly a year and a half. We live together, and we have a pretty strong relationship. He had no past romantic connections with the bride. I'll call her Mary, which some people were asking about. They went to school together from the age of 4 to 10 and remained in touch as pen pals/Facebook friends since then. They rarely see each other in person, and the wedding was the first time that he would see her in about 2 years. There was zero phone signal at the venue. We noticed this when we arrived for the ceremony, and were a little annoyed as the wedding had a hashtag which we couldn't exactly tweet about with no signal. This is important later. We didn't know this until we arrived at the wedding, but the maid of honor, Helen, was Eric's ex-girlfriend. They were together for 3 years, and she cheated on him and dumped him. They have a lot of bad blood and do not have any contact with each other. Okay, so on to the updates. After leaving the ceremony, I got straight on the train and went back to my hometown. I was on the train when I wrote my first post. When I got home, I told my parents everything, and they weren't particularly impressed, and like most of the posters here, they were perplexed that Eric hadn't come with me. My mum gave me a big hug, ran me a bath, and poured me a glass of wine, and I just tried to relax and forget about my day from hell. I still hadn't heard from Eric, but texted him to let him know that I was home safe and would see him tomorrow. Eric texted me back at 9 p.m, asking me what I meant by home. Home or the Airbnb that we booked nearby to the venue. I clarified and he said, "Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Love you so much." I didn't really know what to make of it since the whole day had been such a massive screw-up. So I finished my wine, watched a Disney movie, and went to bed. The next morning, given that I still hadn't heard from Eric at all, I assumed he would be getting in at about midday. So I got up early and started wrapping Christmas presents. At 8 a.m., I heard a key in the door, and what do you know, it's Eric, still in his creased suit with red eyes and looking like death. He wasn't really making sense, so I made him have a shower and warm up, made coffee, and decided to talk once he was looking human again. We sat down together and pieced together his side of the story. Basically, once I had left, Eric was absolutely livid with Mary. He had frozen like a deer in the headlights when she was asking me to go, and was kicking himself that he hadn't done the right thing. About 10 minutes later after I left, Mary turned around and said, "Oh, actually, a few people haven't turned up. Get Vicky to come back. We have a space for her now." And Eric had tried to call me, but because there was no phone signal anywhere near the venue, he couldn't get through. And Mary pretty much immediately said, "Oh well, never mind. She didn't want to be here anyway." Which obviously was a pile of crap and made Eric feel rubbish. The meal was a very formal sit-down affair, so he just kind of grinned and bared it, assuming that I would be coming back in the evening. Eric was the only person mentioned in the speeches, by Mary's father, who wasn't a family member, and apparently it was clear to everyone how disappointed he was that I wasn't there to share it with him. When I texted him at about 6 p.m. to let him know that I was going home, he never received it. He was only able to text me at about 9 p.m. by hiking down the road for 5 minutes to find a signal. All the while, his ex Helen was being sickly sweet, asking where I was. Why didn't I want to come and enjoy the party? Was I shy? Apparently with quite the evil glint in her eye, like she had gotten exactly what she wanted. Neither of us knew that she was the maid of honor until we got there. And given their bad relationship, Eric was pretty pissed off that Mary had failed to mention that she had such a prominent role in the wedding. Whether Helen was behind the seating error, I don't know, but if she was, then Mary was just as bad in enabling it to happen. So Eric stayed at the wedding, miserably, and went back to the Airbnb afterwards alone. He barely slept, feeling angry at Mary and Helen for screwing with us, and at himself for not sticking up for me, and left at 4:30 a.m. to get the first train home, hence why he was back at our place so early. He wasn't really apologetic to me at all. He didn't really seem to see how shitty it was for me. He more felt like he had been insulted by the situation and let down by his oldest friend. He is cutting off Mary and doesn't want anything else to do with her. So yeah, that was Eric's take on the whole thing. To be honest, I was pretty pissed that in all of this, he hadn't really considered how I felt or what it had been like for me getting thrown out of the wedding. While what he had gone through was pretty crummy, he at least had been warm, dry, and well fed. The indignation of your girlfriend being removed from an event you're at isn't really as bad as being the girlfriend, getting soaked in the rain, feeling humiliated, and all the rest. So we talked, and I laid out why I wasn't okay with what had happened, and why his reaction wasn't okay. He can be a bit of a lemon sometimes, and this feels like one of those times. He didn't step up to the plate. He just let the world wash over him and acted as a bystander. I'm still hurt by his actions, and he hasn't really apologized properly. I don't know if he understands that he did wrong too, but this isn't a deal breaker for me. It's a heavy straw on the camel's back, but the camel is still standing. We have a really lovely Christmas coming up, and after a really long autumn of working hard, all I want to do is go back to the happy place that we were before this mess up, and honestly, I don't want to think about it. So I know a lot of you guys are going to drag me over hot coals for this one, but we're still together. I'm not going to break up with him over this, but it's a big dark mark on his record. As far as I'm concerned, he needs to get a lot of extra credit to get a pass this year, to use a terrible analogy, and I expect him to step up and really try to do better from now on. It's not really an ultimatum, but I'm willing to put this behind us if he can prove to me that he's invested and trying harder in this relationship from now on. If he doesn't, then I won't be sticking around. I love him a lot, but he needs to have my back and be empathetic to what I'm going through. I'm sorry that this wasn't the victorious breakup update that so many of you wanted, but I want a nice happy Christmas together. I'm not ruling it out as an option if things don't improve, but I want to give him another chance to prove this relationship is worth it. In the comments, Throw the Switch says, "Things to think about. If Mary said only 10 minutes after you left that you could stay, why didn't he come and physically find you after his call didn't go through? If Mary said only 10 minutes after you left that you could stay, why didn't he go and find a signal to call you 5 minutes away after his call didn't go through? Why didn't he try and find signal to call you, again, only 5 minutes away, until 9 p.m.? It's All Mine Now says, quote, "So I know a lot of you guys are going to drag me over hot coals for this one, but we're still together. Yeah, that's the important thing. You haven't lost him. And as for dragging you over coals, you're going to be the one to live with this selfish, conceited carpet. So really, there's nothing more that I can add that would push the point home more than some more occasions where he just dumps you at the side of the road because he's offended by how they disrespected him by treating you badly." Throw the Switch's comment makes a good point. He didn't even try to catch you up, go down the road to contact you, or even leave in disgust, because all he could think about was his own hurt feelings. You've got a great life coming. OP replies, "I have set a deadline in my head where I need to see significant improvement in a few areas of the relationship, which I have told him is important if he wants us to stay together, and if that doesn't happen, I'm gone. If he messes up big time before then, I'm gone. Just giving him one last chance to pull himself up by his bootstraps and prove that it's worth staying for." I just don't know about that mentality because occasions like this where he needs to step up are few and far between, because I don't imagine in their daily routine lives that he needs to prove himself like that. And if you set a deadline, that deadline better be another occasion where, this can happen and he can prove that he can do the right thing. But I don't know what else that would be. I kind of just feel like OP is lying to themselves and wants to find a way to excuse him, find a way to give him another chance. And that's all well and good, but he had so many chances to contact you, and all he could think about was himself. He came back, and he didn't even ask how you're feeling. He didn't even ask, what's going on? What are you up to? Where are you? You can get back with someone like that if you want to, but he's broken from base level. Any normal person would have the thought, maybe I should contact my partner also because I miss them? I don't know. That story pisses me off. Good luck with him. Not my circus, not my monkeys. Thanks for the story though. Our next post is by user SadPanda2024, and it's titled, "Am I overreacting to my partner's one-time mistake and not giving him a second chance? I, female 26, met my partner, male 39, 6 years ago when I first moved to Canada from Germany." Okay, a 33-year-old getting with a 20-year-old. It's already going really well. This can only end well. We moved in together within 1 year. We work in different fields, but we make about the same amount annually. I found out that I got pregnant in July, and when I told him, he got frustrated. Holy Mary, mother of yikes, Jesus! I told him that I repeatedly reminded him about medication interactions, and the doctor advised using condoms while I'm on this medication, and he refused. Eventually, he said that he's happy to be a dad and supports me. We got invited to a destination wedding in Mexico, his friend's wedding, and I told him that my doctor advised me not to travel as I have been very sick lately. I was hospitalized a few times, so I can't go. He got upset and said he really wanted to go. I got tired of hearing his grumpiness, so I said that I would be fine, it's just a week, so it's okay, just go. I talked to his mum, and she said that she would drive me to the hospital again if I need to, while he will be away. The wedding was last Tuesday, and he left on Saturday evening. He sent some pictures to me on the day. He said he missed me and how he wished I was there, which I said hopefully we can do more trips when the baby is here. Then he was quiet on Wednesday. I got worried, so I texted his friend, and he replied, "Oh, yeah, he's fine. I'll tell him to text you." Still nothing. He's off cheating, isn't he? On Friday evening, so last night, he called me. I asked him what was going on. I was worried sick. He asked how I was doing, if I needed help, and I said I'm good luckily, and no, I've been fine. He then said that he needed to talk to me. He made a horrible drunken mistake. He hooked up with one of the bridesmaids, bride's sister, and brought her to his room. But in the morning, he realized what a fool he was, so he told her to leave. He said, "I made a mistake, but you have to realize if you were with me, this wouldn't have happened. I was drunk and lonely. It was a one-time thing and it meant nothing." I felt like my brain was frozen. I said, "And you ghosted me for days and tell me now? Were you busy with her all this time?" And he said, "No, I needed time to think. I was ashamed." I told him, "Don't bother coming home. Stay with her or your mum until I find a place and that I don't ever want to see you again." He said that I'm being selfish, hormonal, and overreacting to one mistake. He said he took responsibility, owned up to his mistake, and will do anything to prove it to me. Am I overreacting for not even considering this for the sake of the baby? My best friend said that we should try counseling and give him one last chance, but I'm just so upset that I can't even think. Thank you for your advice. Opie, throw the best friend out too. In the comments, Writing Romance says, "He was 100% shacked up with this woman the whole time that he was ghosting you. He's lying." And OP says, "That's how I feel because he didn't even acknowledge me until Friday." Writing Romance replies, "I would reach out to the friend that you talked to, tell him that you know about the bride's sister and you're just confirming the details. That guy knows what happened." Edit to add, the reason I say he shacked up with her is that a guy with this level of maturity would argue to himself, "Well, since I already banged her, then what's the harm?" And OP replies, "I thought about it, then my friend said that this would make me look like a crazy person. Is it crossing the boundary if I do that?" OP, I already said throw your friend out, this is terrible advice. Writing Romance replies, "I guess I would approach it something like, hey, I've spoken to my partner about what happened in Mexico with the bride's sister. I just want to make sure that I have the full story. He spent the rest of the week with her? Keep it somewhat vague and non-accusatory. And yes, it's a white lie, but it can help bring truth. However, also ask yourself the question of whether you even want to know. Would it change your decision to leave him? Also, I missed that this man is almost 40. If he can't even have a drink without ending up falling in another woman's vagina, then you've got way bigger problems." And OP says, "I just texted him that. Hopefully he will tell me the truth instead of covering for him." Realistic Regret says, "If he answers quickly, it will maybe be the truth. If he takes a little time to respond, he's checking with your significant other before he answers." And OP says, "He never replied back. I think he blocked me." So the friend didn't reply back. He has been shacked up with her then. And OP says, "All his friends unfriended me on Facebook and Instagram. I messaged the bridesmaid that he had sex with, and now she blocked me. I wasn't being rude. I told her that Kyle told me about your hookup. I'm wondering if you can please share if it was a one-time thing or more. She blocked me. I'm done reaching out for truth. I'm gonna pack my stuff, whatever I can fit into luggage, and go back before he comes back. I'm very emotional now. I can't wait to go back to my family." Yeah, absolute piece of shit that guy is. And everyone else for just enabling this and taking his side. I know my moral compass on this issue is at least so straight and narrow that I would out even my best friend for doing this to his partner. I wouldn't be a grey-walling pussy and just block you like everyone else here did. That is such weak behavior from everyone. Shame on them, and shame on him for cheating on you, and then blaming it on you, saying, "Oh, I wouldn't have done it if you're here." Shut up, man. You deserve so much better, and you deserve to date someone closer in age to yourself. Please learn from this, OP. Oh my god. And now, on to the update. As many of you suggested, I sent a quick message to his friend and the bridesmaid that he slept with. I told them that Kyle had admitted about his hookup and says that it is a one-time thing, but I'm wondering if there is more to the story that you'd like to share. They both blocked me. Then all his friends blocked me on social media. Late last night, he sent me a message. I think he was drunk, that I'm an unhinged lunatic. He did the right thing and he owned his mistake and confessed to me, yet I acted like a crazy see you next Tuesday and harassed his friends and their family. He meant the bridesmaid. He said that I'm so insecure that it's pathetic. He said we are done and he wants me out of his house immediately. He didn't even once mention the baby. I decided not to bother replying. I had no energy and was crying all day. I'm moving back to my family. I decided last night, early morning tomorrow. My family is happy that I'm moving back, especially my mother. I don't think that I'll say goodbye to his mum. I'm not ready to talk to him, and she will make him do that. Thank you again for all of your comments. Bar Madelaide says, it sounds like you've made a strong decision for your own well-being, and moving back to your family is a positive step toward healing. OP replies, I was awake all night packing and crying. I feel very hurt and heartbroken. Aggravating Style says, it's easy for someone else to say, but don't feel too bad about losing him. He sounds like a terrible person and would likely have been a terrible father to your child. He's already established that he is a terrible partner to you. You are accomplished and are going back to the people who love you and can raise your baby in peace without his influence. You're better off without him. He's a disgusting pig and all of his friends are disgusting. Instead of giving you answers, they chose to cover up for a cheater. It's so gross. I wish you the best. Disgusting pig for sure. They met when OP was 20 and the creep was 33. What a shock he doesn't want anything to do with OP now that she's pregnant. And now onto the final update. Hi, I'm sitting in the airport waiting for my flight, so I thought I'd write one last update. I messaged his mum and told her what happened. I was shocked when she called back immediately and was furious with me. She said that I have some nerve twisting this story to cover my cheating ass. I told her that I don't understand what she was talking about. Apparently, he told everyone, including his mum, that he checked my social media. He had all my passwords, but I never checked any of his, and I've changed them all now, and found out that I was having an affair with a coworker and was trying to trick him to raise my affair baby. I told her that most of my team work virtually, so this makes no sense. I also have maybe 25 followers on my Instagram, and most of them are my family from back home. I also have a rule to never add any of my coworkers on social media because I'd rather keep my personal life and professional life separate. She said that her son found out when he was alone in Mexico, and now he is heartbroken. Then went on and on about how could I do that to him and stuff. I kept explaining, but she wasn't listening. I was so upset that I told her that I'm done arguing and hung up. I'm done with this man and his lies. He just makes up lies and blames me for it. I can't do this anymore. I submitted time off to my boss, she is amazing, and will be settling for the next few weeks. Looking forward to the new chapter of my life without him. In the comments, Funtivity Director says, holy smokes. I'm so sorry. The trash took itself out. These people are toxic. Save yourself. And OP says, I was going to tell his mom I'll gladly do a DNA test when the baby is born just to prove that I have never cheated, and then I realized she doesn't want to listen to me. So what's the point? Funtivity Director replies, think about that once you get some time and space. If you decide to establish paternity, hire legal counsel. Child support is the right of the child. Knowing that, everything can go through the courts. You don't have to engage his mother on the topic. If he pushes for paternity, you may not have a choice. Either way, take your time, build your support circle, be safe and peaceful for you and your baby. Think about what you want and what your child will need, then determine what to do. I'll keep you in my thoughts and prayers. Hell the Deidre says, I'm glad you're going home to your family. A real support network will help you get through this. I'm sorry that you had to deal with that liar, but you'll be better off away from him. I'm not sure how child support works internationally. I hope you can get him to pay for his child. He can't lie away DNA. And OP says, I was wondering why last time he told me to get the hell out of his place immediately. Didn't even ask about the baby or what will happen when the baby is born, and that explains everything. He told everyone that apparently the baby is not his, sticking to his made-up story. Gdrom says, he never wanted the baby, so this was the perfect ploy to get rid of OP and the baby. I feel bad for OP and the baby. I don't know, but the age gap and her ex's maturity were red flags to me though. Corfiz says, at least here in Germany, the social security network will work really well for her. She'll get paid maternity leave, Kindergeld, child subsidies, and Social Security until she gets a job, which she won't while she's visibly pregnant because German employers know that you'll be heading out for a year after giving birth. I wonder if she can go to the Canadian embassy and file for child support against her ex. I really have no clue how international child support works. I hope she'll manage to work something out. Maybe hire a lawyer in Canada to take care of it. I'm a Mage Fight Me says, "You mean a man who started dating a 20-year-old girl when he was 33 wound up being a cheating, lying scum? Who got her pregnant because he refused to wear condoms? And while on an overseas trip hooked up with a bridesmaid and ghosted his sick, pregnant girlfriend for days? And then lied to his mother and God knows who else, claiming that she cheated and tried to hoodwink him? Truly, what a shocking story." Ladies, please, let me assure you that while guys your age may come across as immature, if you're both young, you can both grow. But when a man 13 years your senior is single and wants to date you, despite the fact that you're barely out of high school and may not be of legal drinking age in some countries, that's usually a sign that women his own age have seen him for the pond scum that he is, and that he sees you as an easy mark. I know that not all age gap relationships are terrible, but goddamn, a lot of them are. Yeah, I have nothing else to add to this one. It was so obvious what was going to happen in this one, and it's so sad because what can you do besides watch the train wreck come? I hate with all my heart that this is a repeated thing that keeps happening, but what can you do besides repeating these stories so that others that maybe get to hear this don't repeat these same mistakes? It's just one of those things that's going to happen infinitely, and we need to get on top of it infinitely. Thank you for sharing the story with us, OP. I'm really sorry that you had to go through all of this, but unfortunately that's just life sometimes, and life ain't always fair to everyone. Good luck going forward, and good luck with the child. I hope that you're able to get some child support out of him. My wife had a mental breakdown when I left her alone with the kids. 5 days ago, my wife, 25 female, gave birth to our second child, our daughter, and then our son, 3 male, came home 2 days later. For the past 5 days, I, 25 male, have put myself on a baby duty every night and giving my wife a full night's sleep, as well as getting the kids up and ready for the day. Yesterday morning, I'd gotten the kids ready to go out after pulling another all-nighter. I don't mind it as it gives me some one-on-one time with the baby girl and gives me a chance to get my run back with Radan, as well as give my wife a chance to get herself ready at her own pace as she's still recovering. She's doing amazing, but started to feel bad about me not getting any sleep. I told her it's okay and that I'm fine with it, but last night, before I put our son to bed, I asked my wife if she could watch the kids for a moment while I went to the bathroom. When I came back, she had obviously been crying. I immediately went into panic mode, but she calmed me down, explaining that her mentee B moment was caused by her feeling like she wasn't doing enough, and that she felt horrible that I was choosing to stay with our daughter rather than getting any sleep. I understood her, and she sent me to bed when she woke up this morning after I got a night of intermittent sleep. I know I shouldn't feel like an asshole, but I always overthink, and as a dad, I never feel like I'm doing enough, or what I do compares to what my wife does. She's amazing and just went through childbirth, and I want to give her the time that she needs to recover. Am I the asshole? In the comments, let me make sure I have this straight. This thread is about both parents feeling like jerks because they feel like they aren't doing enough to help the other parent rest. This has to be a humble brag, right? No assholes here, and let your wife know not to worry. She did the heavy lifting the last trimester, really the whole pregnancy, and that you're happy to carry the load a bit until you can't, and by then, she should be rested enough that you two can walk forward together. OP says, a bit of both, but I truly do feel like I need to be doing more. I want to prove that not every man is just doing the bare minimum, and that I can take care of our kids and be trusted just as much as mothers are by default. Look, I get where the mentality is coming from, but at this point, she's been with you for so long, and you've already raised one child together. What is left to prove? If you were going to be like other men, it would have been in the first pregnancy. Why are you still killing yourself for no good reason? Stop torturing yourself with sleep deprivation just to prove a point. You're not, fooling anyone. You're only hurting yourself here. What's wrong with you? I think it's more than okay for her to be genuinely concerned for your mental health and your physical health because you're constantly putting yourself out of your way to sleep deprive yourself. See things from her perspective too, please. And now, onto the update. For a little context, I felt like the asshole because I made my wife cry while leaving her with the kids, regardless of telling her that it was A, only for a trip to the bathroom, and B, necessary for me to sleep in our own bed. Secondly, I currently have 6 weeks off of work for child bonding, so work is no sweat as of now. Thirdly, whomever commented that we should take shifts, you all get cookies. We discussed taking shifts starting tonight, with me taking the night/early mornings, and finally, there is a whole host of backstory on why we are both a bit emotional. This is our second child, but our third pregnancy. Nif, our daughter, is our rainbow baby who we thought that we wouldn't have. Not just for the reason mentioned, but we nearly divorced 2 years prior in a particularly nasty way. A commenter found one of my previous posts and asked why I stayed with her. For context, almost 2 years ago, we were drinking at a friend's birthday party and some very hurtful things were said that couldn't be taken back. Even after sobering up, I was too hurt to move on, and I told her that I wanted to divorce. We both knew that it was because alcohol was the problem, and she swore that she would get help. The idea that we needed CC and IC was also thrown in. We both uncovered problems that needed resolving. Long story short, we focused on fixing the problems in ourselves and our marriage, and started breaking generational cycles. Unfortunately, a lot of roadblocks came our way during our healing. My good friend of 10 plus years cut me off for choosing to give my wife another chance, her mum got arrested, we moved into a smaller house, another friend tried to break us up, my father passed away. I could go on. But you get the point. Fast forward to October 2023. We're in such a spot that we have both been sober since that party, and we were more in love with each other than ever, and we talked about a second baby. We find out that she's pregnant in mid-October and start planning to reveal for Thanksgiving for family. Then, a few days after Halloween, she miscarries. This is where the feeling of not doing enough comes in. I am at work, 35 miles away, when she needs to go to the hospital, and the person who she thought was her best friend for 8-ish years chooses not to go with her. So she had to go by herself, on top of trying to wrangle and stay strong for a rambunctious toddler. I felt horrible, and even with therapy, I haven't really been able to move on from that. So when she got pregnant with our daughter, I did every little thing for her with gusto. Obviously leading up to and exceeding past the birth, evolving into a mantra of, I will be the best husband and father that I can humanly be. Okay, David Goggins. Which leads to another common comment that I've been seeing, her mentee B moment. We both have a dark sense of humor and make light of our pain before helping each other through a problem. So her saying that she had a mentee B, she was just breaking the ice of her problem, leading to the related problems some people seem to have. A little bit of crying is not a mental breakdown. A, you have no right to say someone is or isn't going through something, regardless of circumstance. And B, I downplay because privacy. But I guess I need to say that while I went to the bathroom and our son was in his room and our newborn was fast asleep, my wife sobbed at her hands and knees, fearing that she might fall down that path again, and I was only taking on so much responsibility because she's afraid that I'm only preparing to take them in case she does spiral. When someone posts something a bit vague, it's not necessarily for ulterior motives. Counterpoint, provide this information, what's wrong with you? If you're vague, all we can do is assume. This post was made to answer any question people had regarding the other one and to give background on our marriage, so I may not update again. I do sincerely thank everyone who was kind in the comments, especially all the mums who mentioned the 5 days thing. It gave my wife a laugh and some relief. In the comments, Accurate Prompt 8800 says, Hey OP, thanks for the update. I'm so glad that you managed to have a conversation with her about this. You're a good husband and father, and she will appreciate all the support that you were giving her. I'm glad the 5 days suggestion made her laugh. That's just what you need to do. Keep joking with her if that's what she enjoys. Just continue to be there to support her. And make sure you look after yourself as best you can. Stay strong, you're doing a fab job. You'll both be okay. OP says, something she told me was, you don't get an achievement for getting X amount of sleep. All I can say is therapy has done wonders. Having a moment of crying and then stopping to explain yourself and rationalizing it is not a mental breakdown. It's like a Tuesday and Friday and Sunday with a new baby. She was 5 days postpartum. She was being so rational. I bawled over so much trivial shit those first 2 weeks. Yeah, look, can't say I've been postpartum myself, so I can't relate, unfortunately. But yeah, her saying you don't get an achievement for getting X amount of sleep, I agree with her. And I don't agree with your decision to leave out critical information about the mentee B, because your explanation of it makes a lot of sense and doesn't make me think, oh shit, she's going through postpartum depression, she is a danger to herself, she is a danger to your children, you need to do something now. And instead it was, she was having a moment. We all have a moment, and that's okay. But don't start this shit getting passive-aggressive at people that were just looking out for your best interests. I hate it when people do that. Oh, you didn't know the full story? What's wrong with you making wild assumptions based off of very little information I gave? You people are sick in the head. I hate you. Regardless, I'm glad everything's working itself out. I'm very glad you're going to therapy. That's really good to hear. Didn't expect that you guys had such a crazy 2023 to 2024 year. Glad that you guys made it through that one. That sounds like a mess. You're like the exception to the rule of stories that we have here on Am I the Asshole? And I'd love to know everything. I'd love it if you spilt the tea on all of those interactions, because that was a fascinating little gem that you snuck in there. Our next post is by user Kathleen70, titled, Am I the asshole for showing my friend how to set a timer on his son's computer to make him get off it by a certain time, making his son be angry at me? My 55 female friend, 35 male, has a 10-year-old son, who for the past month on the weekends would go beyond his curfew of 9 p.m. to get off the computer and to get ready for bed by 10 p.m. He would get off the computer like at around midnight, but in the middle of the night, my friend would hear his son's computer turn on at around 3 a.m. I went over to bring him some boxes as he and his son are moving to a new apartment in a new city in 3 weeks. While we were sitting down and drinking coffee and shooting the breeze about the joys of moving, thankfully, he had paid vacation time and PTO that he hadn't used up yet. He made mention about his son on the weekends staying up past 9 p.m. curfew on getting off the computer to get ready for bed, and then hearing him get up in the middle of the night to play on the computer. I made an offhand suggestion about setting a timer for his computer to turn off. He looked at me like I grew 2 heads. He asked, is that even possible? I was like, yeah, just look on the computer. We had to look up how to put it on by Googling it. He never knew that he could set a timer for the computer to turn off. He even Googled if it was possible to set the timer to allow the computer to be turned on. I didn't even think that was possible until we found it on Google. Then we got the son's computer set to turn off at 9 p.m. and wake up at 6 a.m. He was very proud of himself for setting it up. I had told him that his son will get used to the boundaries now. Do tell him the consequences of his actions has warranted a new punishment if he doesn't follow curfew by getting off the computer by 9 p.m. Well, I got a phone call that night from my friend. His son was pissed off about his computer turning off at 9 p.m. I could hear his son screaming at him for being a bad father and that he's going to be reported for this at school. I told him that the school won't do anything beyond asking what you did. You might want to drop him off and go speak with the principal about this, so whatever your son tries to get you in trouble with would be cancelled out by you talking to the principal, and the teacher probably would be sent a message pertaining to him so he cannot get you into any trouble, since this happens at the library and at our school computers too. My friend asked me if we did the right thing by doing this to him. I told him that we did do the right thing, that he has to learn how to make do with the time that he has on the computer before it shuts down, just like he has when he goes to the public library on Saturday, as the computers there shut down at 4:45 p.m. His son has been constantly screaming at him for allowing me to destroy his computer time, and it's been constant for the last 2 weeks. I seriously feel like I'm the asshole in this, as I cheated his son out of being responsible with his computer time. But his dad asked me for advice, and I gave it, and his dad did it. In the comments, Agnar Krakenhammer says, "Not the asshole. Child is throwing a childish tantrum. Dealing with them is part of being a parent." OP replies, "That's what I told my friend, but he feels like he's also the asshole. I told him that you told him there will be consequences, and now he has them. He'll get used to it." Flyin' Rust Bucket replies, "He is indeed an asshole to himself and his son for not setting the boundary early enough. Not only for this, but for allowing his son to regularly cross that boundary and then boo-hooing when he has to deal with his son dealing with actual consequences. This guy hasn't done any favors for himself or for his son until you stepped in. Absolutely not the asshole. Kids shouldn't be walking all over their parents' rules, regardless of how anybody else feels about those rules." Pumpkin Powerful says, "Not the asshole. Children need structure and boundaries. This is no different than having a bedtime set at 9 p.m. to have to turn the TV off and go to bed." So the kid threatening to report the parent to his school for parenting is nonsense. The school will probably laugh at him. I know I would if he complained about this. OP replies, his school had already been informed about it the next day about the new timer on the computer. The principal thinks that this is a genius idea to enforce curfew for the kid, since the kid has been in trouble with falling asleep in class. He actually asked, "How did you do it?" My friend told him that he and his best friend Googled it and set it up. He told me that the principal is putting it in the monthly school newsletter that is sent out to all the parents. He said this might help the parents keep the kids from becoming too obsessed about being online all the time. I mean, fair enough. You have to have these kids respect your boundaries and respect you as a parent. If he's been throwing tantrums for 2 weeks straight and you haven't cracked down on it, I fault you as the parent for not getting your kid in line. What's going on with that? They should have like 1 or 2 nights of tantrums max, and it should be shut down by then. I understand I'm not a parent and I haven't been through this and I haven't done this before, but I just think that 2 weeks of tantrums is ridiculous. Is that not a fault in parenting and his parenting style that has led to this, ridiculous behavior from his kid? I know my ass had tantrums back in the day. I wanted one of those handheld Mega Man games, and I threw an absolute fit until I got one. And I can understand my mum in that instance. She gave in to it. She gave me what I wanted. But I know that I took that as an excuse to keep pushing boundaries and try to get more out of her, and she pushed back. She held firm on her boundaries and she didn't let it keep going. I'm glad that she did that for me because it taught me healthy boundaries. It taught me respect. And now, onto the update. So I showed my friend this thread this morning at breakfast, and he sends his thanks to everyone for their comments, and since I had posted, he has moved to his new home in his new city. He has told his son that actions have consequences. He has been a bit lax on the punishment, as he had to work 2 jobs to keep a roof over their heads and everything else. Until last month, when his boss gave him a nice raise and a bonus for his hard work, which warranted the move to the new apartment, which is closer to his job, and he's quit the other job so that he could focus more on his son. With him being the sole parental unit that his son has, he has admitted that he allowed him to be without severe punishments, which got us to this thread as he was worried about his sleep schedule for school. His son has gotten used to the timer on the computer, and he's doing better as he and his son had a long talk about the computer, and his son admits that he was getting too attached to his computer and the games that he plays on there. To which I'm impressed with how open his son was with realizing that he was getting too attached to something that was causing him problems. His son has accepted the timer in the end, and the doubt that he did wrong by his son no longer troubles his mind. He thanks everyone, even those who told him that he was a bad dad. He is learning and he is growing. In the comments, Del Monte says, "Sometimes a parent just has to be the bad guy in their children's point of view. So many parents are afraid of being the bad guy, and you can see it in their children's behavior." Dreamsnap says, I would argue that they are doing much greater harm than what you can see with their immediate behavior. People tend to focus, even parents, on immediate behavior because frankly, it's what interferes with their life the most. But this is a kid who isn't learning to emotionally regulate when they don't get their way. And that's a huge problem. If it internalizes as they get older, you start to see anxiety and depression. If it externalizes, you'll see teenage and adults acting out, and that can become dangerous. Because disappointment is a part of life. Hearing the word no is just a part of life. Absolutely. You need to be able to tell your child no. It is so detrimental to their development to never say no. You can't always be the fun parent. It's just not the way to go. And I appreciate him for stepping up and starting the hard work that should have been started ages ago, but the next best day to start is today. And that's very much commendable that he is able to put his ego aside and be like, you know what? Yeah, I did mess up. I was a bad parent. I will do better for my son. I respect that. Our next post is by a deleted user, and it's titled, "I'm tired of my ex-husband's wife wanting to be my friend just because he cheated on us both. I don't understand why I'm in this situation, and honestly I'm frustrated because even my own family tells me that I'm the bad one here. I just need to vent, and I don't need any advice or somebody telling me, do this, I think you should tell her this, or I would write her this or this." Okay, pop off. More than 17 years ago, my ex-husband cheated on me with a woman that I didn't know, but she knew me. He left me for her. Our only daughter was a baby, and I just moved on with my life. I'm never gonna fight for a man who makes immature decisions without first thinking about the consequences. He married that woman. I went on with my life, preferring to have a healthy co-parenting for my daughter. He never showed remorse, and he even told me that ours was always a mistake, and that woman was the love of his life. That helped me to realize that he's a total dick, and that I don't need a man like that in my life. Now he's cheated on her, and for some reason, this woman who always had a really cold and distant relationship with me is insisting in trying to talk with me every day. I found out about the infidelity from my daughter, who wasn't affected by that, so I didn't think too much about it. The only thing that worried me was to know if he was going to be able to continue having our daughter at his house on weekends, as always. But his wife started sending me messages explaining what happened when I never asked her that. And in the past, I only spoke to her if her husband didn't answer my texts to ask something about my daughter. It's obvious that she needs to talk about it. Doesn't matter if I answer dryly because she sends me long audios talking about it anyway. I mean, I understand that she needs to talk about her husband's infidelity and blah blah blah, but why me? I don't want to be rude, but I don't care how she or he feels. In one of her audios, she says, "You know how I feel." I guess? But that was 17 years ago. It's not the same. And if I'm being 100% honest, she can't compare herself to me at all. A woman who has just given birth to whom her husband tells her that he has been cheating on her for a long time with another woman who is not boring in bed and does know how to value him, versus a woman who always knew that her husband is unfaithful and decided to marry him anyway. Anyway, I've tried to ignore her as much as I can, but even when I talk to my family or friends about this, almost all of them told me things like, "Oh, but she must feel lonely. But she wasn't to blame for being the other one. I think you should be more empathetic. We all need someone to talk to." Or my favorite one, "She's not to blame for him being a cheater. You should understand her because she needs help." What is wrong with these people? Jesus. I understand that she's not to blame and he's the cheater, but she, a totally adult woman at that time, decided to marry a man that she knew was sleeping with her while his wife was pregnant. So why should I now carry the weight of helping her when she never helped me by telling me, "Hey, your husband slept with me and that's really shitty because he's married with you"? Or, "That's what I'd do if a married man flirted with me." And now, if she didn't do any of that, then why is it my duty as a feminist to force myself to be her friend? It doesn't make sense. And the worst thing is that almost all the women around me tell me that I should help her and be her ear when I don't want to feel empathy for her or for him. I think she and he knew very well what they were getting into. I don't understand why I should be her free therapist now. Being cheated on is not my whole personality. I don't need to talk about that 24/7 with her. I just chose to ignore her, and that's what I'm going to continue doing because I just don't care how she feels, even if I'm a bad feminist for not feeling empathy. Edit: no, I can't block her because she's still living with him, and I need to have her contact in case of an emergency with my daughter. And honestly, it's weird to have so many comments and even private messages from people wanting to tell me what I should send to her and even writing what I feel. I'm sorry, but there's no way that I'm going to use the message of a stranger who doesn't know me, or how I feel, or the whole situation to say something to someone. I feel like a lot of people in the comments are reflecting their own traumas. In the comments, Worth Mammoth says, I would be brutally honest with her like you were in the post. You're absolutely right. I think you can't compare your situation 17 years ago and now. She knew what she was going into. She has made her bed and has to lie in it. You're not her therapist. If you ask me, she also has to take the blame for sleeping with a married husband, knowing his wife is bringing his child into the world. Your family is... I don't even know how to describe it. Your mum just trying to justify her own actions with that? Ew. OP says, at one point I thought about being totally honest, but then I thought that would only bring unnecessary problems if they get back together, because it seems like that. I just answer things like, what a shame, or the nyeh emoji, and she sends me audios of more than 2 minutes that I don't usually listen to because I don't care. My god, she is the #1 yapper, and it's obvious that she has no social awareness, given everything, but given the fact that you're like, damn man, that's crazy. She just yaps at you for 2 minutes. Why can't people just get therapists? Like, go to a therapist and yap to them about it. I don't care. Stop venting your feelings to strangers, especially strangers that you did wrong to. It's crazy that she can't see how wrong she is for putting this on you. I really hope that I never get knocked on the head and become that delusional, because that sounds like a living hell. And now, onto the update. First of all, my mother was a lover for a long time when I was a teenager and during my adulthood. Their relationship lasted long, years until he died. I think his wife never found out about his affair. That's why my mum manipulates me so much into not judging my ex's wife, because no one chooses who to fall in love with. My mother always reflected herself on that woman, and that's why she said that to my ex-husband and his lover, now wife, are soulmates, and I shouldn't get in the way. I was very young. At the time, I could only lean on my mother for a little bit of support, and well, narcissists always catch vulnerable people. Nowadays, I don't have much contact with her, but my daughter spends time with my family. And about my friends, well, I'm a feminist activist, and opinions regarding lovers are divided because most of them are in the liberal side. Most of the times, it's seen as something misogynistic to judge them because they are single women and the man is the one we should blame. Plus, we need to be sororas with other girls. So I expected that reaction from most of them. I agree with that in most cases, but not in this one. I can feel empathy when the woman did not know or when she is a minor being groomed, but in this case, I don't feel any pity because she knew damn well what she was doing. Women can also be mean and cruel. Women can also choose to be the bad guys in the story without someone manipulating us, because we are not weak, and my ex's wife is that kind of woman. No one manipulated her into doing anything. I'm sorry, that explanation was perhaps unnecessary, but there were people who didn't understand my family's and friends' behavior, and honestly, it feels good to vent. I have spoken with my ex's wife, because honestly, a few days ago I had a really stressful day, and the last thing that I needed was to see her messages in my WhatsApp, so I just exploded. I planned to continue ignoring her, but that day I was upset about things about my work, and I ended up telling her everything. I sent her an audio telling her that I'm not interested in her life or in the fact that she's suffering. I told her that I'm not her friend, nor am I interested in being one. She never asked me for forgiveness, and now she expects me to start the group of women cheated on by my ex. I told her other things, and I would love to be able to post audios here. I told her that she knew very well what she got herself into. She knew well that my ex was capable of cheating on the mother of his baby, but she still decided to marry him and live this stupid fantasy that she could change him and that she was different from all of the other women that he was with. God, I hate long audios, but it was over 5 whole minutes telling her that her situation and mine are nothing alike. I think that was my greatest catharsis. She got upset, and we started arguing. It was quite tiring, and the last thing I want is to have problems after 17 years of having normal co-parenting. I know that they are not going to get divorced, and that means that I'll have to live with her in my life forever, so I sent a message to my ex, resending him one of the audios that she sent me. I took the work to listen to them all, and she never apologized to me. I don't need her apologies, by the way. I don't care, but some comments asked me about that. They were just audios complaining and wanting us both to speak badly about him or wanting to have me as her free therapist. I told my ex to tell his wife to calm down and pay for a psychologist. He apologized to me and told me that they're both working on the marriage, so they're at the stage where she still feels angry and insecure with him. Like, yes, obviously, idiots. So since I suffered the same, no, it's not the same, she felt that we could share that pain. He told me that they started going to the online conferences of I don't know what couple who teach how to get over an infidelity. Sometimes I feel envious of people who can scam others so easily. Anyway, I told him that I am not friends with her and that this affects our co-parenting, so he should put a stop to her if she doesn't understand what I say. In the end, he reluctantly told me that he was going to talk to her, and I've gone 3 days without any message from her. Except today, one where she just told me that my daughter was sleeping there, so I guess it worked. I don't care if they live a happy or miserable marriage. I don't care if she's happy knowing that he cheated on her, but stays with him anyways. I just want to live in peace without getting into trouble with people who at 40 plus years old are still living mentally in high school. In the comments, Pink Threaded Wrist says, she wants to have a pity club with the cheated on ex-wife while working on the relationship? That's rich. Calling Water says, at least OP's ex seemed to have put a stop to it. Perhaps he realized that a why he sucks club wasn't to his benefit. Yeah, glad that it sorted itself out, but yeah, why he sucks club is crazy. Why is she still with him is my question. Why are you venting with the ex about him cheating on you? If you're staying with him, what's going on? This doesn't make any sense. Do people like this really exist? Has anyone here actually experienced people like this? Again, it's just levels of craziness I never wish to experience myself. My God, put me out of my misery if I'm ever caught in between something like this. Anyway, thank you for the story, OP. That was wildly entertaining. My boyfriend won't ask for my hand, and my dad is staging a family boycott for my wedding. Is my boyfriend being selfish? I've been with my boyfriend, male 25, for 3 years. We both just finished school and are finally ready for marriage. He proposed last week and I happily said yes. I couldn't be happier. I love him and he's going to be an awesome dad someday. But my boyfriend is very new school and my dad is kind of old school. My dad was beyond mad that my boyfriend didn't ask my dad for my hand before proposing. My dad said that he was willing to hear my boyfriend's apology if my boyfriend formally asks for my hand at a dinner that my dad said that he will pay for at the restaurant of my boyfriend's choosing. My dad feels like he is being very accommodating. He will bring my boyfriend's favorite wine to celebrate. I spoke to my boyfriend last night and he won't budge. He doesn't believe in that tradition. My boyfriend showed me an article online where a Pakistani woman was stoned to death outside of a courthouse because she married a man against her family's wishes. This just happened. My boyfriend, who witnessed his father be abusive and possessive with his mum as a child, has always felt strongly that women are not property. He thinks the tradition of asking for her hand is repulsive. His point is that he has met my whole family and has gotten to know them. He says they've always known his intentions, and he never made it a secret that he was in love with me and wanted to marry me and have children. He feels that he has done enough to announce his intentions, and all of them seemed to approve of him. He says that at this point, he only needs my approval to marry him and nobody else's. So yesterday, my mum told me that my dad, who is not even speaking to me because I won't set my foot down with my boyfriend, is calling the whole family and telling them to not attend my wedding. My mum says that my boyfriend is the one treating me like property by not letting me have a say in his decision to not observe a tradition that my two older sisters' husbands observed. I told my mum that I understand where my boyfriend is coming from and that I've decided to do away with the tradition of him asking for my hand. So my mother is obviously mad and said that I should be ready for serious consequences. I asked her what, and she would not say. But from talking to my sister, she said that they would blackball us from all family gatherings. My two sisters and my mum have told me my boyfriend is being selfish. The wedding is set for August 9th. I'm worried that nobody in my family will attend my wedding. In the comments, Deleted said, quote, "My dad feels like he is being very accommodating." No, both he and your mother are being controlling, and they're attempting to make you choose between your fiancé and them. Choose your fiancé, otherwise you're setting a precedent for this type of behavior and interference for the rest of your marriage. OP replies, "This is what I'm afraid of. My fiancé and I don't practice Catholic religion like my family does, so I wonder what will happen when my kids aren't baptized and all that. Does your family have a history of these kinds of controlling behaviors?" OP replies, "My father does. I just never really had a disagreement with him." So my guess then that ultimately this is not about your boyfriend refusing the request per se, but rather a deliberate showdown over whether you'll continue to kowtow to your father or not. Suarez Biteguard says, "Fine, go ahead and agree to your parents' Stone Age demand, but make sure they pay your fiancé your full worth in cattle and or loot. No dowry, no request for hand in marriage. If they want the old traditions, they can have all of them. Don't forget to include the traditional bedding ceremony, where both families watch the bride and groom have sex for the first time. Hell, while you're at it, fly the sullied sheets the next morning to prove to the serfs and nobles that the bride was a virgin and is now deflowered." I think it was already pointed out in the comments here that this is just them being controlling, them trying to always have their way, and them trying to continue this method of abuse, because this will happen when the kids come through. It's going to be their way or the highway. You're getting those kids baptized. Hell or high water, it's going to happen, damn it. So you can choose here whether you put your foot down or you let it happen and you let them walk all over you. And now, onto the update. The wedding went on as planned. My parents stuck to their guns and boycotted. One of my two sisters attended and is now happily blacklisted from our family. Nobody else from my entire family showed up, including my two brothers. The wedding was a little unconventional. My sister walked my husband down the aisle, and then his sister walked me down the aisle. I wanted this because my sister-in-law actually introduced us and helped me get my first date with him. There was no question about who gives away the bride or even about objections. It was normal other than that. There has been no contact between me and my family other than my one sister. My mother has made it a point to send me a card every time that they have a family gathering for holidays or birthdays at their house to let me know that my father says I'm not invited. I get one almost every month. I don't even read them anymore. I just toss them. I don't know why they keep sending them because I've made no effort to contact them and I live over 3 hours away. So it's not like I run into them by accident. The reason I came back to post this here is because some people here made a prediction that came true, that they would come crawling back when we had children. I am now expecting our first child, a girl. She will be the first grandchild for my parents. My parents found out about the pregnancy a few months ago through a family friend. They didn't waste any time in making demands, not requests, demands. My boyfriend and I are not religious, but I had a Catholic upbringing. I don't practice at all by choice. My mother called me back in April, telling me that my father wanted our daughter's middle name to be his mother's first name. I said no. My father was listening in on speaker, so I went ahead and told them that they were officially uninvited from all birthdays, graduations, and any other important dates in her life. My father called me half an hour later, crying and begging me to come stay with them for the birth so that my mother could care for me. I said no. He also said that he had already made arrangements for his priest to baptize her at his church, but that I needed to agree to naming her after his mother if I wanted this to happen. He said he'd already planned a big celebration for the birth and the baptism that he was paying for. I said no to all of it. He went from meekly trying to sweet-talk me to raising his voice at me, and I hung up. He called a couple of more times to apologize for losing his temper, and then again begging me to reconsider giving birth at a hospital near them so that they could visit us. He denied having any knowledge of my mother sending me cards to uninvite us to any family functions, and even said that he specifically asked her to invite us, but he was told that I declined every time. He lets my mum do the dirty work so that he can later hide behind her and deny that he had any knowledge. He's done this since I was a little girl. He does this every time he wants to drop the hammer on somebody, but be the good cop also. He will never change. He denied having any knowledge of why anybody in the family missed my wedding. I told him that our daughter would not be baptized or Catholic at all. No offense to Catholics. I told him that he was too manipulative and controlling, and I didn't want my daughter exposed to that. He's too toxic and just venomous. Coincidentally, that day, and for several days after that phone call, I got tons of calls and emails from my brothers, their wives, my sister, and all my aunts. They all wanted to apologize for missing my wedding, and all had specific excuses and wanted to make plans to be there for my daughter's birth. I banned them all from her life until she's old enough to decide for herself to let them in. My husband was a little bit surprised and not sure about banning everybody forever. He's more leaning towards supervised visits if they want to drive to us. My dad has been calling him like crazy, but we are a united front. My husband is deferring to me, but giving me ideas as to how I can give a little if I decide to. But with my family, there is no giving a little. They want it all. For now, they are all banned. I will reconsider when the youngest of our children turns 18. For now, my dad will have to settle for sucking up to my husband while I stick to my guns. Unlike him, I don't mind owning my decisions, even if it means I'm bad cop. I'm not ready to give up a relatively drama-free, stress-free life to allow my dad and all of his sheep back into our lives. In the comments, Banana4 says, "Wow, your parents have a lot of nerve. They want you to give birth at a hospital convenient to them. They think that you'd trust them to look after you. Quote, my mother has made it a point to send me a card every time they have a family gathering for holidays. I get one almost every month. This is frankly amazing that she would go to that effort." Sadwa says, after they found out about the baby, would have been a really great time to mail all of that back. Better yet, take pictures. Any phone call OP receives should be responded to with a text message with a picture of one of the uninvitations. My Two Cats Are Great says, is there anything more satisfying than reading about assholes having to deal with the consequences of their actions? I don't think there is. Good on you, OP, for setting your boundaries and sticking to them. Keep building an awesome life for you, your husband, your daughter, and your chosen family. Don't waste another thought on those jerks. A downvoted commenter says, he should have just done such a small task and asked, like to make peace. Geez, I mean, really? Pushing your family away for such a stupid reason? On their side and yours. And OP says, but that's the thing. After that one small task, they would want to name my daughter. After another small task, then they would ask I go have the baby near them. Another small task, then they have her baptized by their priest. Then they pick her school, then they make life decisions for her like they tried to with me and my siblings. All small tasks. OP replying to a downvoted comment that things have gone too far and to make amends for their daughter. I guess I would tell you that not everything fits in the oversimplification in your comments. My daughter will be better off without a full family of manipulative, controlling, and abusive people, or people who condone such behavior. After years of abuse, I was glad that my husband decided that my dad's demand that he ask permission to marry me was too antiquated. The original conflict that caused this rift was years of abuse and manipulation. I chose to burn bridges that needed to go. Otherwise, I would never be free to make my own decisions about my own life without consulting with my dad at every turn. Quote, I chose to burn bridges that needed to go? Damn straight, I want to high-five her. I hope their little family is living their best lives without that toxic, controlling drama llama mess. It's not me, it's your bussy says, quote, my dad is kind of old school. Cutting off your daughter, boycotting her wedding, and forcing all of your family to also boycott or get the same treatment, all because her boyfriend didn't jump through one ancient hoop, is a little more than kind of old school. He's Neolithic. And this is why I love stories like this, because this is a shining example of what to do with abusive, dick-headed parents. Do not let them walk all over you. Realize what they're doing is manipulative, realize that it goes against what your wishes are, and it also goes against common sense, and just stand your ground. Set your boundaries, be firm with them, and don't let them cross it. They disrespected OP so many times. Some of the worst disrespect too, just blacklisting her from family events and not showing up to her wedding, then instantly expecting her to forgive about it and demanding that she do everything they say. Just cruel. Insanely cruel behavior. Devoid of empathy. There is not a shred of empathy in any of their souls. I see where the husband is coming from here, being like, maybe we should give them supervised visitation. I don't think you should. I don't think anyone in that family deserves any time besides the other sister that got blacklisted. None of them are good people. They all suck, they should all stay the hell away from OP and OP's daughter, and they should all go find someone else to bother. Thank you for the story, OP, and thank you for being a shining example of the right thing to do. Our next post is by user MiserableWait2784, and it's titled, Am I the asshole for not caring that I was uninvited to my older brother's wedding? This whole thing is so weird. I, 27 male, am gay. I came out at 16, and my parents told me that they would always love me, but to not mention it to my older brother, who I'll call Brick. Then 19 male, 30 male now. When I was confused and asked why, they said that Brick had expressed some awful opinions about gay people. I limited talking to Brick until I moved out at 18, which wasn't much of a problem because we were never close. I went to uni, got a good job, and an awesome boyfriend, 28 male, in my home city. Me and my boyfriend Angel live a peaceful life. Peaceful until a few days ago when I got a phone call from my brother. I was concerned that Brick was calling me, as we have never messaged before, just had each other's numbers for emergency purposes. I picked up because maybe there was some emergency happening, and he opened the call with an annoyed, "Hey man," and I knew something was up. He said he was getting married to his fiancée, Yen, 24 female, next year. I didn't even know he had a girlfriend. I was like, "That's great, Brick," and asked some boring wedding things that he begrudgingly answered. He then told me that invites were being sent out in a couple of weeks, and that I could bring a +1. Well, here's where I made the mistake that started this mess. Without thinking, like an idiot, I said, "Cool, I'll bring my boyfriend." Major mess up. Brick immediately starts yelling insults down the line, screaming that he wouldn't have an F-slur at his wedding. I didn't say anything and just hung up. I was rattled by hearing those words from my own brother's mouth, even though I knew his feelings about people like me. I told Angel, and he comforted me, ordering in my favorite restaurant and watching movies with me, which was awesome. We went to bed later, and I felt alright the next day. I sent my parents a message that Brick invited me and then uninvited me from his wedding pretty much in the same breath, and went on my way to work. Not a clue of the crap storm waiting for me when I got off. When I turned my phone on again after my shift, it was blowing up. Messages and calls from my parents and relatives galore asking me what the hell happened. I phoned my parents back when I got home and gave them the rundown of what happened and said I honestly didn't care because it's not like Brick would be coming to my wedding anyways. My parents immediately chastised me for my obvious disinterest and disregard of my brother's life. That's rich. And told me that I should be apologizing to him for bringing my personal life into his wedding. What? I basically told my parents to screw off and have been getting bombarded with messages from relatives to apologize to my brother and to get my invite reinstated and apologize to my parents for disrespecting them. But I really don't want to. Angel is reassuring me that I did nothing wrong, but it's still nagging me. Am I the asshole? Ring ring. Hello, Brick. Sorry for being a flaming homosexual. Sorry that upsets you so much. Sorry for bringing my personal life into your wedding when you talked about a +1 and I said I'd bring my boyfriend. Didn't know that it upset you so much, mate. In the comments, OK Number says, why did your brother sound annoyed at the beginning of the call? Did he already know? Or was he being forced to invite you by your parents? Seems weird. OP replies, he's never been my biggest fan, honestly. Couldn't tell. We were very different as kids, like polar opposites, and he didn't like that. Very on brand for him. He definitely didn't know that I was gay before the call. My parents have kept it very under wraps for years. In terms if he was being forced to invite me by my parents, I really have zero clue. Dittohead Forever says, you're not the asshole, and it's easy to see where your brother got his attitude. Quote, my parents told me they would always love me. Yeah, until the rubber met the road. Your parents sure let you down. Quote, my parents told me that I should be apologizing to him? Huh? Isn't it natural to respond to an invitation with a +1 to say, great, I will bring my significant other? Quote, Angel's reassuring me that I did nothing wrong. He's right. The Magnificent Prim says, and on the parents asking him to apologize, you can tell that they're not actually supportive because they're still treating queer identities like a kink that needs to be kept out of non-consenting public eye. Interests that people can have opinions on and not intrinsic parts of who they are. They're effectively treating this like OP requested that he show up in fetish gear. Absolutely not the asshole. We need to lay these ideas about queer identities to bed already. Amen. And people need to stop concerning themselves about what consenting adults do with each other, who gets married to who, etc. Just mind their business. Lemon Charlie says, not the asshole. If he's a homophobe and the family condone his homophobia, then they're enabling it, and the wedding will have a homophobic attitude. Your parents warned you about Brick, which proved sadly true since the moment he realized he went straight to the slurs. Even if you did apologize, then you know that you'll be in for abuse at the wedding if Brick ever accepts it. Angel is right, and the one treating you best. Tell your family that you won't be the punching bag for Brick's hate. You already know my position on this one. I've given enough sly comments here. The hell is wrong with everyone? Why do I keep getting posts where everyone sucks? It's like horrifically. Were their brains eaten by worms? How do they not see this horrific injustice in front of them and go, I should support the person that is having an injustice against them? Why do they say, I need to beat the shit out of the victim here. I need to dogpile on them because actually I'd never supported them. Screw him and his gayness. I just don't get it. It's 2024. Like, can we not all just be flaming pieces of shit for once? What's going on? Not the asshole for not caring that you weren't invited to your older brother's wedding, OP. Find some new family. Oh my god. And now, onto the update. Y'all have really opened my eyes to a lot of issues in my family. I apologize for only replying to a few comments. There's just so many of you. Big shout out to all of the people who gave compliments to Angel. I showed him this post last night and he thanks you all. I've been showing him lots of love because he really is an angel. And to the people calling this fake, AI, cliche and whatnot, I hate to break it to you all, but this is just my life. It sounds cliche because this is the sort of thing that is all too real that happens to many people in the community. Just move along if you want to say that stuff, because you're honestly just wasting your time. One of two things I would also like to address is people questioning me about thinking that I could possibly be the asshole in this situation. And all I can say is that when you have a mass of people telling you that you're wrong for what you did, it's hard to not maybe believe them just a little bit, no matter how absurd it is. Second thing, for people wondering how no one in the family knew that I was gay, I really was never, and am not, close with my extended family, as they all live in different provinces, and my immediate family never travelled. We really just send each other holiday and birthday messages and have brief conversations whenever those are sent, and I just never had the urge to come out to them. Anyways, on to the update. I decided I didn't want to let this sit for any longer. I took a day off work, and I added my parents, Brick, and all the family that messaged and called me into one big group chat, per one advice I saw here. I laid out everything that went down to them, in case they were told a different story by my parents and brother. I told them that I was going no contact with my parents and Brick no matter what, and if they didn't apologize and realize what they did wrong, I would cut them off too. I turned my phone off and continued on without it for the rest of the day. Once I turned my phone on again, I had lots of messages from them. My parents were outraged, and Brick said nothing. Some of my extended family apologized and told me that my parents just told them that I was mean to Brick about some of his wedding plan choices, which got me uninvited. Still trying to wrap my head around how stupid that is. Seriously think that my parents might be Neanderthals. Anyway, the real story made others even more angry and more insistent that I apologize, and they were promptly blocked. I didn't answer any of my parents' texts and calls, and blocked them. I feel like I have a weight off my shoulders. I'm not concerned about my parents showing up at our apartment as they moved away from my city last year. Angel and I are planning a lovely trip, per advice of a lot of people that we thought was great, to France to visit his family during when the wedding will be taking place, which I'm very excited for. I've heard nothing but good things about them. This will most likely be my only update on this post, and I thank you all for your support. In the comments, S. Tilly says, surprising no one, the parents are homophobes too. Support without any actual backup and enabling of the fragrantly homophobic brother. Kelly Rose says, I knew they were homophobes immediately with the "we support you, but don't tell your brother" or like the rest of the family bullshit. It would be one thing to warn OP, be careful, your brother is a huge homophobe, but they basically said that it's on OP to suffer so the homophobe feels more comfortable. Such classic bullshit. Queer person exists. Non-queer person? What the hell? Why would you do this to me? A tale as old as time, unfortunately. Good riddance to bad news going no contact with the Neanders. And definitely not Iron Man says, hey now, this is no place for Neander slander. By all accounts, Neanderthals seem pretty normal. Living, dying, eating, creating, interbreeding. Typical human stuff. OP's families are ghouls, sucking the positivity out of everywhere they go. And that's where I'm going to end today's episode, guys. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did, let me know what you thought of it down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!